of Teams. Jen of Keenach go bhfuil na microphone ac of and da chud your Teams agus na fónich an live. Ma ha se bheith céisteach is an itar hengacha agus go bhfuil se bheith sean pín chuideh microphone éid. Mystáisiigh sin éar mé a háirlich fiúlach stúrs der treirechach le fachgal úrnaí.
Our gracious God and loving Heavenly Father, as we come before Thee once again on this day, Lord, thank You for this day, and Lord, for another new day and another day on mercy's ground. And we thank You, Lord, for every mercy and blessing that again is ours on this day. And Lord, as we gather here at this committee meeting, that You would, Lord, lead us and guide us, and in any deliberations and any decisions that have to be made, we thank You, O Lord, that we have been again afforded the privilege to be here. And again, O Lord, we would ask that Your hand would lead and guide us. And we thank You, Lord, for the staff here. We thank You, Lord, for the Chief Executive and his staff. We pray for them. We pray, O Lord, for our leader and our convener. We pray, O Lord, for the chair of this committee, that You would bless them and be with them. And we thank You, Lord, for all the work that is done. We give thanks for Eastern and all that he does for this committee, and pray that You would bless him at all times. We give thanks, Lord, for Paul Mackenzie and his staff also, who have prepared the reports for us. And we pray, O Lord, that You would bless them and be with them, and give thanks again for the work that they do. So, Lord, we would ask that You would be with us now, and that You would continue before us for the rest of this day, that You would lead, guide, help and strengthen us, and that we would look to Jesus, who is the author and finisher of our faith, and then we would look to Him at all times, the one who died in our room and in our place, and the one who gave us the gift of eternal life for those who ask and for those who seek. So, Lord, be with us now and go before us. Forgive us, Lord, for our many sins and shortcomings and failings. And all we ask is in Jesus' name. Amen.
Chunio nis ga cláraig, an a dain bhí stiúd na cunio chuidí na lenas na cíine. Ma ha sib na bailtin committee agus fialach dro computer fácah camera éid agus microphone Ma ha office na fialach dro computer fácah an da chud mar éilsibh a bíon dí aisc náftigus kist. Chuidí na gain búil agus office go bhfuil system féus an deomar. As mach ag an charich in a mics. Chiat a beilske goine agus bí an gáróin an stad. An óidir likas an gariche as dei mic, áriche a mic kuterak. Cha bhí 8 vek terak ag amsa bí. Ma ha se person tilke keist fak over mic eid agus ma ha afike in a bíní ás chorlichen alab an rute jeno. Het piemachas a horste vui le chometi. An a daimh die klare goed fé mi búil an jammerakal no kiacha goeie eistig vo far a veelsev. Ik kusper a hundiek gaarlik didig na kunju agus behoorte búil a chometi agus an hofike in emmergi fuiach. Agus hier een luch compaard ele a kunju aga. Goeien kutjach naar kunju go wil a kunju a klare agus bi eis larach linie korle as tjoi na kunju. Sheikh, my washes in Eschon of Laar Hain, Ger Hunderson, Hiet Ger Hunders, Naconio, a Dichula, Fichet, in Glipplain, Davile, Cook, Richet, Erison, son Undige, Vilju Kundige, Tach believe. Dalafer, Ger Hunders, Kunio Heitens, the Hokula, at Fichet in Glipplain, Davile, Cook, Richet, Session, son Fisterge. Dress. Klare goed, maar ha ik boeil aan de kustperson bij de klare op.
Chair.
Yes, Gordon.
I have a question on the High Trans minute.
Okay.
I see the High Trans business plan for 25-26 and the regional strategy delivery plan outline very ambitious goals for sustainable transport and net zero emissions, including initiatives, just scanning through the minutes, like the Logan Nair Hart Aerospace Collaboration and the Fort William Integrated Transport Plan. So I was want to ask, with regards to Western Isles representation and transport strategies, can I ask, how are the specific transport needs and challenges of the Western Isles, such as connectivity to rural communities and infrastructure for hybrid aircraft, potential inter-island tunnels, being prioritised and integrated into these plans to ensure equitable benefit for island residents? Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Gordon. Of course, Callum, Colm, and Linda all attend the meeting, so I'll ask Callum to respond.
Thank you, Chair. There are many initiatives being looked at just now through Hightrans and other means. We do have direct contact ourselves with Scottish Government and Transport Scotland on some of these matters. Some of the matters are more applicable to Scottish mainland. However, we are looking for every potential application here in the islands as well. We hope at the September series to have some more discussion on connectivity, particularly with fixed links and the sound crossings. But we're happy to maybe do a further update on Hightrans measures as applicable to the islands for that committee as well.
I want to thanks, Chair. I want to ask, have any of our priorities made the business plan for 25-26?
Well, very generally looking at active travel plans, etc., is what we've been looking at with Hightrans. There are other initiatives as well, which we can bring up in the course of time as well.
Especially on inter-island tunnels have been discussed, but it's just a bit of a worry that none of our specific priorities have been put in this plan. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Callum has written Transport Scotland in terms of the fixed links. I don't think he's had a response, but I think he's going to take that forward further. Yeah.
We hope to have Transport Scotland at the next series in September, where we can have that discussion on fixed links and more connectivity issues regarding other routes as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Gordon. Jasko klaar uis, maar ik boeil aan de guspersen bij de klaar oproep behoorlijk zijn klaar. We gaan veel meer aan je boeil en daar werd ja a klaar uis gusper. Ben je klaar ui? Ja. Gerre kusper tashbenig na nashaken. Meer zo'n foutje gaan konju. Seo chuis Davy Hamill wa Calmac agus Ishi again mun duye chuglaseichen Calmac agus Lewis Hamill wa Seamal agus minichi isen and suye chuglaseichen ure. David, you're going first, I think, and you have to leave earlier, I believe.
Yes, I do. I've got an appointment to keep for one of the children. Good morning, everybody, and I hope it's okay. I don't have any presentation to share. However, I thought I would give a little update of where the vessels are, probably starting with the ones that are more pertinent to the Outer Isles to begin with, and starting in the north. So at the moment, the biggest issue facing us just now is the Embry Hebrides. So Hebrides is operating the Sky Triangle service, but it's operating stern loading only. Tomorrow night we have contractors attending the vessel in Tarbert when she finishes service, and they will be carrying out a repair to the bow visor loading arms. So all going well, the vessel will return to service as expected, as timetabled on Friday morning. However, we won't know until tomorrow evening, Friday morning, whether that has been successful or not. So there is still that potential that she will need to go to Stornoway for further inspection and repair from between the 30th of June and the 3rd of July. If that does happen, then we will be looking at deployments. We have the Alfred that will be released from Arran to come up and assist on the Sky Triangle for those days. the timetable for that will be released as soon as we know what happens on Thursday. But quietly confident that we'll get the Hebrides back on Friday morning. Loch Porston, the lift issue, we have resolved the lift issue. So she was away recently with the Loch Brewster covering for some propulsion unit changeouts and maintenance there. While she was in dock in Greenock, we replaced some of the control equipment for the lift to try and get that working. We got it working fine, but in the testing, one of the motors was burned out. Now the motor had to come from Italy, the replacement one. So we expected that to be back by the end of this week, start of next week. However, we managed to expedite that delivery and get it to us quicker. And yesterday, the replacement was made. There were still some alarms going off, just control alarms, but we've troubleshot those, and the vessel has returned this morning with the lifts available. However, the normal timetable will resume as of tomorrow. We had a number of NHS patients booked on the alternate timetable, so we thought it best not to change the timetable at that late stage and ask people to disrupt their travel even further. So as of tomorrow, the Sound of Harris will return to the published timetable. Yesterday afternoon, I don't know if you were made aware of it, but the Loch Seaforth had a slight blip with the lifts on the port side, but they were all resolved very quickly. Very little to report there. And our big ongoing saga with the Caledonian Isles continues, and she will return hopefully next week. We're looking at the 25th. Other sort of topical issues to come up, we have the passenger access system in Stornoway, which we are continuing to work with our partners on. We're committed to working with Stornoway Port Authority with whatever they can do with regards to the stricken passenger access system, whatever they can suggest with gangways, and we are committed to being involved in what the next stages look like as well, so that the designs that they procure fit the vessel, fit the customer, fit the port staff as well. While we can't do anything to accelerate the change or the removal of the current passenger access system or the design and procurement of another system, we are making improvements to how the luggage van works and how we get foot passengers through, particularly from Ullapool side, so that we're making things a lot cleaner on the Ullapool side, so that passengers can leave their luggage in a much better way. It's a much better flow through the port building as well. Apart from that, Austin, there's not really a huge amount to update on, although I would be quite happy to take any questions from the committee.
Kirsten, ag duine sa bí? Ray McKenzie.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not on your committee, but if you don't mind, I'll speak now. The passenger access system, Stornoway, I've had so many people. I mean, it's ridiculous that this has dragged out for, is it a year or nearly a year? You know, ships are being built and launched and everything else, and yet, you know, we've got this system that, I mean, people will be climbing up rope ladders the way things are going. It's ridiculous. People who are handicapped, you know, they've got to go through the car deck and all the rest of it. And I mean, the community councils, all the bodies I'm speaking to, they're up in arms about this, and it's not satisfactory. And the sooner it's sorted out, the better. And I would like to know, you know, what is the prognosis with this?
I would agree with your points, but so you okay for me to come in, Austin?
Yes.
Yeah.
And David, just before we had this discussion with Alec last Wednesday, of course, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
and
yeah.
I do agree, Ray. It's been a long time without the passenger access system, and it is Stornoway Port Authority's passenger access system, and until they can put something different in place, we are hamstrung to continue to take passengers over the car deck. We are trying to make that as comfortable and as accessible as possible. And the guys in Stornoway particularly, well, it doesn't make a difference in Ullapool, sorry, but in Stornoway, when it is busy, we are trying to load the car deck in a different manner so that we're taking customers on. When there is space, we are making more use of the mezzanine decks so that we can get more cars off the main car deck to allow more space for passengers to walk through and get to those internal stairways and internal lifts. We do, as I say, we're committed to working with Stornoway Port Authority and we'll help them in whatever way we can that makes it easier for them to get rid of the passenger access system or to implement gangway solutions, or, as I say, to help them with their designs moving forward. But I'm afraid that lies in their court, Ray.
I've got the three of you here, so if you put your mic, and can you keep your mic on, please, Ray? Can you put it off?
Yeah, if I can come back on that, it appears that, I know that's the Port Authority, but that's no excuse. We're all involved in this. And it's a case of the Port Authority, there's £50 million plus been spent over on the other side of the harbour. And yet it appears that cruise ships are more important than the local travelling public through the harbour here. So the situation is just ridiculous, and it should be resolved.
Your point is well made, and it's made probably over the last year, Ray, but I'm going to let you in, Gordon, online. I know you've got a lot to say on this as well.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I can improve on what Councillor Mackenzie has said, but I want to say, in the era of partnership working, I really would expect CalMac and the Port Authority to come to a reasonable place. So can I ask, when was the last time you discussed this passenger access system, and what is the latest status? Is there an action plan or a timeline in place? Because as with Councillor Mackenzie and probably a lot of councillors, we are getting this almost on a daily basis, and it's causing real angst, especially after a long journey. So if you could answer these, I would be appreciative.
Sorry, David. I appreciate that, Gordon. And David and myself attended a meeting with Alex on Wednesday. It was also discussed at a meeting on Friday, which was attended by Alistair Allen, MSP, and by Angus Campbell, Chair of the Community Board. So it's not as if we're not doing anything about it. David, you can respond now.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I was going to say something very similar, that we talk about it on a regular occurrence, and the points were made to the Stornoway Port Authority on Friday at the Western Isles Ferry Group, as well as other meetings throughout the time. As I understand it, and I can't go into too much detail because I don't know the absolute facts, Gordon, but it sits with the insurance and legal departments within Stornoway Port Authority and their insurance providers. So next steps really needs to sit with the Stornoway Port Authority to define. I've heard that June is going to be a month where we might see the passenger access system removed. We are working with the Stornoway Port Authority to make things better for customers, and we plan to get the temporary walkway removed and replaced. Again, that sits with Stornoway Port Authority, but I understand they are procuring that replacement. I saw your letter to Stornoway Port Authority as well, Gordon, on Facebook, and the direction of that is the right direction. It's for Stornoway Port Authority to be able to tell us what the next steps are and where they are with the process. We'll try and make it as comfortable for passengers as we possibly can, and we continue to raise it through internal defects. We continue to raise risks and near misses, because we are loading passengers over the car deck at the moment. It's not a position we would like to be in, and it's not a position that we've enjoyed being in for the last 12 months or 18 months, however long it's been since the since the passenger access system was broken. We do get those bits of feedback as well, and that is something that we continue to pass on to the Port Authority in an attempt to accelerate any movement.
Gordon, do you want back?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just finally, thanks very much, David, for that response. I think just basically, I think it's very, very important that things are communicated to the public, because I think the lack of communication is adding to the angst, you know, and letting people know that you're discussing it and considering options, you know, would help. So, you know, communication is so key in this, because obviously if you don't hear anything, the public will think that nobody's taking any interest in their issue. So, but thanks a lot for your comments.
No worries, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I think maybe, David, we can have a chat afterwards when you're free about this in terms of the Comhairle and Calmac, who have been doing a lot of work on this, and I appreciate what Gordon's saying. Yeah.
Yep. No, so do I. I think it might be an action that you and I can take to make sure we
Yeah.
join up on that.
Yeah. Is this on the passenger access as well? Okay, I'd like to, because the others were before you, Norman, but you weren't passenger access, were you, Kenya? Yeah, can we let Kenneth in first then? He was first in the queue. Yeah. Right, Kenny.
Thank you.
Garlic.
As a garlic. No, I won't be that cruel to David. Partly on the passenger access system, but also on general passenger access. At the moment, with the problem with the HEB, and I think we discussed this at the Hebrides group, but just for the benefit of those who weren't there, the Hebrides can only discharge passengers on the port side because, as I understand from the meeting the other day, on the starboard side, because the port side ramp access system hasn't been uprated enough to take passengers. Can we have confirmation that that will be rectified as soon as possible, so that we don't end up with situation just now where between Stornoway and Tarbert and Lochmaddy, every passenger has to come off on the car deck. Every food passenger, I should say, has to come off on the car deck. And it's not acceptable, and certainly going into the winter, we certainly don't want that with the weather conditions. Coupled with that, that maybe it's time to focus the minds of Stornoway Port Authority a bit more by putting a bit of pressure on them. In Uig, there's a minibus takes people directly onto the car deck rather than making them walk. In Stornoway, Ullapool Port Authority provided the van, provided a solution, not Stornoway Port. It was Ullapool that provided the solution that's in place just now. But maybe Stornoway Port Authority should be putting more effort into providing safe access onto the vessel by having either a minibus or a bus system to take the passengers on, rather than making them walk down that exposed ramp and the system that's there. I'm sure Calmac are getting lots of negative reaction from passengers who are having to go on there, and it won't be affecting. It'll be affecting your satisfaction figures. So surely some extra pressure, even to the extent of saying, well, maybe we shouldn't be taking food passengers on in Stornoway if the only access is through the car deck, the way it is, to really concentrate the mind of the only people who are responsible for this, which is Stornoway Port Authority. They're the ones that should be putting the statements out to the public to keep the public aware of it. It's theirs. Calmac tend to get the blame for a lot of things that have nothing to do with them. And I think the blame should be going directly onto Stornoway Port Authority here, and the pressure should be on them from everybody to come up with a solution that ensures that passengers are treated properly and have a proper access onto the vessel. And I'm pleased to hear the way you're working on the Seaforth to allow easier access, because I know how difficult it is to get in amongst the cars when they're fully loaded. Maybe getting the food passengers on before the cars are loaded may be a better way, and having a minibus to take them on and off, I think, would be a big step forward.
David, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. I'll come to the bus mitigation first, and we might, what I'll do is I'll take that away and see if it is something that we can consider as a further mitigation for getting passengers onto the car deck a bit more comfortably. The Hebrides foot passengers, you are right, they are coming off via the car deck at the moment. It's because of the port infrastructure upgrades that happened because of the expectation for Glen Rosa to come in with the bigger gangways that she was going to have. Then yes, the starboard side davit that takes that gangway was upgraded on the Hebrides. I seem to remember it cost quite a lot of money to do so as well. The port side davit is of the smaller ilk, so it's only there for the current gangways. Should the Hebrides come back with a clean bill of health on Friday, then I don't see why foot passengers would be required to load via the car deck any longer. It should just go back to normal operations, Kenny, so that should be where we stand just now. I would imagine that any upgrade to the port side davit would be based on what the future vessel deployment in Cascade looks like. So I couldn't comment on whether that will be considered for a future change.
Okay, well, obviously, I'm sure that the crew won't be very happy to know that actually the gangway that they use currently to get on and off on the port side is okay for crew use, but not for passenger use. So
I think the difference between crew and passenger use gangways, though, is that the crew are allowed to load the crew gangways there for a safe access and egress in case of emergencies and for them to continue their shifts throughout the night and the likes. The passenger gangways need to be at a much shallower angle than a crew gangway is allowed to be, and there are more restrictions in what a passenger can go over than what a crew member can go over. Hence the reason we can't use the crew gangways.
yeah, but I would hope that looking at future deployment and to be fully flexible, that both sides should be used for passengers, and we shouldn't be accepting that passengers have to come off on the car deck as a norm. It should be in very exceptional and extenuating circumstances, not on a regular basis. And the best way around that is to ensure that the vessel can work and operate fully on both sides to the best, providing the best means of egress and access for foot passengers as well as car passengers.
Yep. Okay.
Happy, Dolly?
Yeah. He's going to come back on the minibus thing, was he? Were you going to take the minibus thing away?
The minibus thing, I'll take it away and see if it's something that we can consider. Kenny, obviously we'll need to figure out whether that's any safer or any better than what we have just now. But we'll evaluate it and see if there is something that we can work with on that.
Because it's for the Port Authority, is it not, to ensure that there's a safe means of access on and off vessels? Is that not right?
I think it's Calmac, actually.
Calmac.
Yeah, with regards to the passenger access system, it's the Port Authority, but with regards to the loading of passengers when there is no passenger access system, then yeah, that sits with us.
Okay.
Right, Taplet, passenger access system, Tatella did out.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm not a member of your committee, not even Don Skiraroo. I've been banging on about this with Alec, a fellow Ruach, since this started over a year ago. And I've spoken to Stuart Maxwell at Calmac about it as well. I've had whose responsibility is for getting passengers on and off the vessel bounced backwards and forwards from the port telling me it's Calmac's issue, and Stuart Maxwell bounced back saying, well, it's actually the passenger access system belongs to the port, etc., etc. I understand Councillor Murray's frustration and why he's bringing this to the fore. And the trouble is, I've asked the questions umpteen times over the year. It's an information vacuum, and it's been filled by misinformation, such as that the focus is on the Deepwater Port and the focus is on other business. I'm led to believe that there's a working team within the Port Authority actively trying to find a solution to this. At every one of their meetings, this is probably front and centre rather than anything else. If anybody thinks this is getting pushed onto the back burner, I don't think that's the case. I think the issue is with the insurers the manufacturers and the litigation that they're involved in just now. And unfortunately, there's no information coming out from the Port Authority, and that's leading to everybody filling that vacuum with their own interpretation of why they're not doing something. I don't know, David. I think possibly that's where you're standing as well. Is they're waiting to do something. They're waiting for a fix. They're waiting for the insurers to come to a conclusion as to how they can move forward. And unfortunately, in that time, everybody's frustration is spilling over, and quite rightly so, because it's an untenable situation. It cannot go on, but they're having to wait for the outcome of the deliberations with the insurers. I think there's link span access happening pretty much all over the West Coast just now, particularly in the Outer Hebrides. I think a lot of the vessels and a lot of the ports are having to use access on and off the link span. So it's not unique to Stornoway, although the Stornoway one is the one that's been ongoing because of the passenger access system. I'm led to believe that the passenger access system was resisted by the previous chief executive of Stornoway Port Authority, and was Scottish Government who pushed it in their direction because there was grants available. I think Stornoway, Liverpool and Brodick got the passenger access system. When it doesn't work, it's a real pain in the neck. And I did point out that maybe it would take a 63-year-old golfer with a big bag who's had 2 previous heart attacks, lugging his stuff up and down the stairs when the lifts aren't working, to have a heart, to end up in A&E again, or possibly dead. And I was speaking in the first person when I said it. That might focus people's minds wonderfully if something was to go wrong. But I hope there is light at the end of the tunnel. But unfortunately, the information vacuum is getting filled by people speculating about why they're not doing anything with regards to the passenger access system. Then there needs to be a statement going out combined between Caledonia, McBrain and Stornoway Port Authorities to say, listen, we're sorry we haven't kept you up to date with this, but here's where we are, this is what's happening, and this will be the resolution. Because I think a fix is somewhere in the region of £1 million. A new passenger access system is 3 or 4 times that. So we're talking expensive fixes here. But passenger access and the angst it's causing is huge. And Councillor Mackenzie and Councillor Murray are quite right, and Kenny. It cannot go on, and it's harming the PR for the Port Authority and for CalMac, and I think knocking heads together, and Euston's probably fed up hearing about it as well, and yourself. But if we can find out exactly what the position is, and somebody make a statement somewhere and inform the general public that it is front and centre of their deliberations, I think that would go a long way to ease the public angst over this, because it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get any better until somebody tells somebody, this is where we are, this is a position, and this is how we're going to move forward, because nobody's telling anybody anything, and that cannot continue.
Malcolm, I see your,
Thank you, Chair. Just in the light of these comments, is it known from all these discussions with the Stornoway Port Authority, are they prepared to issue such a statement? Because it should really come from them in the first instance.
Okay,
David,
yes, I don't think it's a bad idea, actually, some sort of statement to come from the Stornoway Port Authority, and we can work together to try and get that. This week I have been asking for what are those external lines of communication, what can we say to our customers to make it a bit better, because I imagine that we are getting a lot more kickback from CalMac. I imagine CalMac are getting a lot more kickback than Stornoway Port Authority, because we are very active on customer surveys and social media channels. So we are seeing those questions come in. We are seeing questions about what the next steps are, and we are asking Stornoway Port Authority for input into the messages that we present. We want to be quite collaborative on that, rather than just go with the we don't know statement. So I do feel that maybe with the support of some of the councillors, or maybe with the support of yourself, Euston, we can get some sort of, or we should aim to get some sort of external communication pulled together between the corridor between CalMac and the Stornoway Port Authority, as in way of an update to the people of Lewis on what's happening with the passenger access system and what those next stages are, because it is clear as mud, and we just need a bit of clarity. I think a bit of clarity would allow community members to be more confident in where things are going, be a bit more at ease with the loading via the car deck, it would allow us to be a bit more at ease with the reduction of that process continuing any longer, and with an idea on what the future needs to be like. We are setting ourselves up for that work, and we've allocated a project manager to be available for that point in time where Stornoway Port Authority are able to say, here are the designs for the next passenger access system, or whatever that system may be. And we will then, as I said earlier on, we will then evaluate that against the vessel, against the port staff, but more importantly with the customers and with the end users of it, so that we are getting something as a collective that is fit for purpose and allays all fears. So I would quite happily, just if we could build that into an action to try and work together, maybe through the Western Isles Ferry Group or whatever, to get that statement provided.
I have spoken to two of the board members personally as well, Norman, about it, but you want to come back?
I'm just in my own conversations. I think they're limited in what they can say at the moment because of the ongoing deliberations. But again, I think they should be able to say something. You know, you're right, David. I think a statement of what's holding this back. Surely they won't be too worried about what it is. They can see if they're vague enough and saying this is where we are and here's where we hope to be going and this is the time frame. Something along those lines, I think, would greatly help. I know they've got a PR company, another Oostjoch, so
must be good.
Must be good, yeah. And I know Fletch. You know Fletch as well. And I had a conversation with him, and I said, you know, again, if there's an information vacuum, it gets filled with misinformation. So something would be good. I think if we can push Alec and the Port Authority to, you know, to come up with something rather than the constant nothing to the public, it would be a good idea. And I think they would be willing, given this meeting here and your own angst as well through the ferry company, you know, to put some kind of statement out, just to update the general public and assure them that it's not been ignored. And I think that's what people want to know, that this matter is not just been pushed to the sidelines just now because we're coping with a walking on and off the link span. It's not a good end product for anybody to be. I mean, I don't often walk on and off the ferry. I usually drive, but I went across for a funeral in Inverness, and I just went across, and coming off wasn't a great experience, I have to say. And again, any information that they could give would be better than no information at all, because it's getting filled again with speculation.
Is this passenger access as well? I don't know what else can be said, but Colin?
Thanks, Chair. Just a comment. At the present time, David, is have you thought of giving the passengers at present, who are the ones being affected, a discounted rate? Because no doubt you'll be getting a discounted rate for the berthing at Stornoway because of this. Can you not put that onto the passengers who are the ones affected? Because I think if that would come, at least that would be an acknowledgement that there is a problem. But instead of whatever they're paying, there's a fair reduction.
I'm sure if we were getting a reduction in the port fees, we would pass that on to the customers. But as I understand it, we're not, and we're also tied with the fares that we can charge, and I'm afraid we can't offer reductions in fares for this. So I apologise. That's not an answer that I can give, but it's something we can look at, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry, Donald, this has got to be because David's got to leave shortly.
I know.
And that
It's not for David, Chair. Yeah. If there's a statement to go out from the Port Authority, it should include an apology to the travelling public of Lewis for what they have endured over the last nearly 2 years. It's really unacceptable. It needs to be addressed, and an apology should be included in any statement.
Yeah. Right, Kenneth, I'm going to let you in. You were first, and was he? I thought I saw your light going first. Right. Well, we need to give others an opportunity here. There you go. Yeah.
Hi there. Thanks for coming to speak to us. It's about a problem I know you're aware of yourself. It's getting gas to Barra. We've received more complaints recently about businesses not being able to get their gas for hotels and cafes and the like, as well as private individuals. Spoke to the individuals who take the gas into the island yesterday, and I gather this has been an issue for near a decade now. They discussed various options that they think are reasonable and they've put forward, and I tend to agree with them. But there still seems to be this issue and impasse. As is the gas, I believe, has to come in through the north and then through Uist and then down and then across to us. Obviously, this is adding costs because they have to employ more people for a day or two to get them to the mainland, hotels, all the rest of it, road mileage, fuel, and then the extra ferry as well needed, which again is adding reliability issues on top of the problems. You add an extra ferry into the chain instead of one, got two ferries. Well, in the winter, people just don't get gas if the ferries don't come. It's as I said, I'm aware you're aware of this. A general plea to say, can we come together and actually find a solution to this, because it's 9 years now. It needs knocked on the head, I think.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And I do know that, although I don't look after Barra services at the moment, Ian Graham, the area manager for Kilmac, is in conversations weekly, as I understand it, with the Barra Transport Committee, but also with the suppliers of the gas as well. So he is in regular communication with them, and hopefully looking to some sort of agreement of how that can move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I would I'd also like to reinforce what Kenneth says as regards the gas. This has been an ongoing issue for a long time, long before your time as well, David. So it's something that should have been sorted out long before now. I've got a couple of wee questions for you.
Sorry, I'm getting pulled away. I've got the wee one's appointment to get to,
Right, okay.
and I'm getting. Would you mind giving me a call later on? Is that all right?
Aye, that's fine, Dave. Yeah, cheers.
Apologies, I do need to cut that short, but just I need to get out the door.
Okay, are you able to come back later then, David, or?
I'll be away for about an hour, so I'm not sure if you'll be there, but I'm more than happy to field any questions
offline. 2 or 3, David. So yeah.
Okay, I'll dial back in when I get back.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Tom. See you soon.
Sorry, Malcolm. Was this a question for David?
No, definitely not. It's just to support Councillor MacDonald and what he said. I was on the ferry in December 2023 and it was broken down then. So that's 18 months. Yeah. And in addition, I was at a function hosted by the Port Authority, attended by Councillor Crichton and perhaps others, where Alec MacLeod said, and this is in the autumn of 2024, that it would be late summer of 2025 before there was a solution. So I'm just giving dates to support what you've said, Norrie. Thank you.
Yeah, I was looking back at my own correspondence on this, and that goes back a year, last January, actually, Malcolm. It's been discussed hundreds of times. Yeah. Anyway, I think the point's been made, and we'll deal with it. Right, Lewis, you don't have to go early, do you?
No, I do not. No, I'm here.
And maybe you can answer questions on passenger access as well.
I'll do my best.
Specifically, the one Comhairle made in relation to passenger access on the new ferries. Are we able to access on both sides?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So both new vessels will have upgraded davits on both sides of the ship, so there would be complete redundancy. I do have a bit of the history on the Hebrides. It was a bit of a quicker fix for the Hebrides, which was why it was only added on one side, because of obviously delays to Glen Rosa at the time, when Glen Rosa was planned to obviously be operating the Little Minch routes. So that was why it was added to one side at that time. But certainly for the new vessels, we'll have the davits capable of the reach and the capacity on both sides.
Okay, you can carry on with your presentation then and update us on what's happening with lake spans and new vessels, etc.
No problem, I can do. So I said to Callum, I don't have a kind of formal presentation, more of an update, but Callum has kindly invited us, both myself, Transport Scotland, to kind of attend in person in September, so we can provide more of a kind of presentation then. But what we'll do is just give a brief update of, you know, the new vessel projects, primarily the small vessel replacement programme, and also the vessels that are under construction in Turkey for the Little Minch. And I'm happy to also, you know, answer any questions on other potential new vessel projects in the pipeline. So just for anyone that doesn't know myself, I'm Lewis Hamill, Technical Manager at Siar, and been here for 9 years and involved in a number of the new build projects with particular focus on small vessels and the Little Minch vessels. I think I'll maybe start with the small vessels then, and just to give everyone a kind of up to speed of where we're at with that. We do have 2 phases, so the Outer Hebrides route's fallen into the phase 2. For anyone that's kind of seen the news recently, we have awarded a contract for 7 vessels for phase 1. So that is to Remontowa in Poland. So that was awarded in March, and we're kind of just at the early stages of the contract with that. Vessel deliveries for those vessels will be kind of between 2027 and early 2029 for all 7 vessels. That is a standardised design. That is all electric with diesel backup, but we'll be operating them as all electric. And these were selected for kind of the routes originally based upon their categorisation of waters, with the Sound of Harris and Sound of Barra being a bit more stringent in the regulations. That was always pushed back to phase 2, but also the phase 1 routes hold all the older vessels. So that was why they were primarily put first, compared to the Loch Eilean and Loch Portion, which are, I wouldn't say newer, but they are newer than the vessels we're replacing in phase 1. Bringing us on to phase 2, we have commenced work at the end of last year. We carried out some public engagement events in Barra, Eriskay, Bernary and over in Harris. And basically that was to just very early stages to kind of show what we'll be planning to look at. We are looking to have as much standardisation with the design and the vessels we're building in phase 1. However, we always knew there was going to be a few challenges associated with the Outer Hebrides routes, mainly given Bernary Leverburgh with the shallow waters that we experience there, and then also just that a bit more car capacity be required on both of these routes. So primary focus of phase 2 is these 2 routes, but we do intend at the moment to build 3 vessels. So that's what we'll be asking for in the funding from Transport Scotland. We are at the kind of early stages of design, so we do need to go round the design loops again. You know, we don't have any preconceived ideas of what the ship might look like, what the hull form might look like. So we are looking at kind of hull form analysis just now, and also looking at all the kind of options that might be available for the vessels. Now, not to say we're putting Sound of Barra on the back burner, but Sound of Harris really is the kind of is where the constraints lie in the design. So we've actually carried out a bathymetric survey. We've done that last winter. Not sure if anyone saw the little survey boats scooting about the Sound of Harris, but the channel hadn't actually been surveyed for about 25 years. So I found it was a really good exercise to do this, to give us all the knowledge that we could for informing the vessel design. And we're now looking at options with CalMac and also Northern Lighthouse Board and MCA, who MCA hold the kind of, they've got the say on the passage. So we're looking at what can be done to try and get a little bit more depth on the vessel, more draft, that could then obviously help us improve, you know, the vessel design. And obviously we're looking towards low emission technologies, or as low as we possibly can. The Loch Portion, obviously, for those that are aware, it is very restricted by the vessel's main particulars, particularly the draft, which does make her a pretty guzzler when it comes to the fuel. Out of a small vessel consisting of 16 vessels, she contributes to 30% of the fuel bill. So it is quite a portion when you think of it, for that's just one vessel. So we really have it, we have to do our work here to try and make sure that we can come up with a vessel that obviously is reliable, but looking at towards reducing the emissions and fuel consumption. There is options that will be looked at. There was an overwhelming majority feedback from the public engagement events that I don't think it's any secret that 2 vessels would be ideal for the Sound of Harris. But there is other options. We've got to look at that and what it might mean for infrastructure. It's not really possible to go out and just build a big vessel for this route, given the kind of constraints we have. So the car capacity likely would have to be managed by multiple vessels during busy periods. Maybe during the quieter periods, one's enough. So we are looking at various options. 1 vessel covering the capacity, 2 vessels, what that might look like. If it's 2 vessels, 1 starting from Leverburgh, 1 from Bernary, is it 2 that can tie up on the kind of North Uist side? So there's various options being looked at just now, and I can't really say too much else other than that hopefully when we come to speak in September, we'll have a good update on all that as well. So, and I might add that Callum and his team, they attend our kind of working group meetings with ourselves, CalMac and Transport Scotland, so there's a lot of good input from the council as well. That's pretty much phase 2. What we'll look to be doing around about the time of kind of coming to talk to yourself in September is carry out further public engagement events to give an update to the general public on where we're at with the vessel design process, and obviously where we're getting to in terms of looking at timetabling and such. In terms of timescales for the phase 2 vessels, we are looking to complete the business case by the end of this year, start of early next year, and then put that forward to Transport Scotland in the new year, and hopefully get the out to procurement early next year. For anyone that's not aware, our procurement exercises take minimum 9 months. It's just the process that we have to go through with regards to a 2-stage process. So 1 process taking 3 months, the other 6 months. We've been through very recently with the Islay vessels, Little Minge vessels, and then the small vessel phase 1. We've just started the procurement for 2 Northern Isles vessels as well. So 9 months is pretty much the minimum we can do, and we have been asked plenty of questions, can that be quicker? But unfortunately, that's not. So that, in our planning, we'd be taking us towards kind of end of 2026, beginning of 2027 for awarding a contract to a shipyard. And then typically for these smaller vessels, we would need to allow 2 years for a build for the first one. Not that a shipyard couldn't build these quicker, because they are very small in comparison in terms of steelwork and materials, but it is the equipment, like propulsors, batteries, these types of equipment are not really off the shelf readily available. So the lead times for these are normally a minimum of 12 to 18 months. So that kind of impacts the delivery schedules as well for these boats. If we do obviously go out and build multiple vessels, you're probably looking at a gap of 4 to 6 months between the vessels as well. And that pretty much covers small vessel phase 2. I'm not sure, Ocean, if you want me to answer questions on that first, or move on to the Little Minge vessels.
Just move on just now, David, and we'll take questions at the end.
No problem, I can do. So I'm also involved in the 4 boats that we have under construction in Turkey. So between myself and my boss, Director of Vessels, Jim Anderson, we are there very regular. We've just completed sea trials, or the first set of sea trials, I should say, on the Isle of Islay, which is the first vessel, which will be for the Islay route. So that was very successful at the end of May there. But it is still kind of early days. We do have further sea trials to go out and carry, particularly with the battery systems, because they are hybrid vessels. So that we'll be looking to hopefully be doing that in the very near future. In terms of vessel deliveries, we are currently working with the shipyard so that we can give an update to ministers and also to the NZEC committee. So we have to provide an update at the end of this month. So I don't have a kind of date of what we're looking at for Isle of Islay yet, but it will be in the next few months that we're looking at. The gap between the vessels, we've always had them with kind of about 6-month gaps, but certainly what we can see from vessel 3 and 4, so the Lochmore and the Claymore, which will be for the Little Minge, the gaps are starting to get smaller. Both of those vessels are currently sitting on the slipway in Chemry, and good progress has been made in those vessels in terms of the kind of outfitting. So certainly for the Lochmore, which will be the first vessel for Little Minge, all equipment's on board. The level of outfitting is at a really good standard. The vessel technically has been launched, just not actually in the water due to the space in the shipyard. the shipyard at one point we're building 16 ships and still have about 12 under construction, 4 of them being ours. So once space is freed up, then we'll be looking at launching the Lockmore. So again, that would likely be over the kind of summer period at some point, but we'll come back with dates on that. And even for the Claymore, structurally complete, all equipment now on board the ship, all major equipment, I should say, and the outfitting is starting to get to a good stage on the slipway as well. So certainly what we're seeing is the gaps are reducing between the 4 vessels. Probably not much else to say on that, and obviously I'm happy to share once we, no doubt you'll receive it, Eilean, anyway, but when we give the update to NZ and to ministers at the end of this month, happy to share that update with yourselves.
Okay, thank you, Lewis. Maybe move on to the Lottie and the Gassy works as well, if you would.
Yeah, I can do. I can give an update on that. So I'm not directly involved in these, but do have an update on them. So the Lottie project, we have presented a business case to Transport Scotland for the funding of the vessel. So that was done in May, and we're now just kind of sitting, waiting to hear back on what that will be. There's the kind of planning from our side was to move out to procurement with both the Northern Isles freight vessels, which you may have seen the news for a couple of weeks ago, and also the Lottie with a small gap in between them. That's not been the case at the moment, so we're still waiting to hear back from Transport Scotland in the interim, and we're hoping to hear back by the end of this month. What that will mean in terms of timescales, I'm currently unsure of. The plan was to try and award a contract to the shipyard by the end of this financial year, so the end of March 2026. Whether delayed procurement might shift that, because as I say, 9 months is pretty much the minimum we can really do this in without it getting a bit ridiculous. So that's the kind of update in the Lottie. And then for the Gassy, likewise, the kind of business case was presented to Transport Scotland in line with the Lord of the Isles replacement, and likewise waiting to hear back on what the kind of next stages with that be, with various options being presented of do minimum for the current infrastructure and the new infrastructure at Gassy. So again, be happy to give kind of written updates following updates on those two.
What about the tender award for the ground investigation works at Gassy? I believe you have the finance for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Eilean. I would need to get an update from my port colleagues at CMAL, but happy to give you an update in writing. I believe the funding was available for that, because that's a bit separate from to fully commit to the actual construction of a new site or anything. So I can find out on that and give a written update.
Okay, anything else, Lewis, or are you happy for questions?
I think we've kind of covered that, and happy to take any questions. I've maybe forgotten something, but I'm sure someone will ask a question on it.
Norman?
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee, not even on Skiraroo. Thanks, Lewis, for the updates. Going back to what you were saying there about the Leverborough Bernary route.
Yes.
And possibly the Barra Eriskay route as well. I think in previous discussions, when we were talking about tunnels across a wider Scottish wish list of where we would like to see fixed links, I think there was only 3 in the whole of the West Coast, and 2 of them were the Outer Hebrides, Eriskay Barra and the Leverborough Bernary route. I don't wish to deprive you of revenue, but when you're talking about the cost, 30% of the fuel cost for that particular, was one particular vessel, and the cost of replacement vessels, somewhere along the line we're going to have to get serious about whether we're going to actually do tunneling or possibly a fixed link in these particular situations. So, I mean, I would hope that somewhere along the line somebody's going to say, we're not going to just keep mentioning this at the end of every discussion. Somebody's going to get serious and say, right, how much is this going to cost? What's the general picture going to look like? How much is it going to save? It might in the end save Caledonia McBrain something when it comes to replacement vessels, but it's going to have to be a hard discussion about numbers and cost. At some stage, it's definitely going to have to be doable, because as Gordon Murray, I think Ray as well alluded to, this has to be in the High Trans overall picture, and I think Cal will probably pick it up maybe at the next meeting, but somewhere along the line, we're going to have to get serious about this. And another question I was going to ask was about standardisation. I'm sure 10 or however many years back, the end game or the end goal was to have vessels and port infrastructure that were completely interchangeable, so you could put vessels on any particular route and it didn't make any difference. Hopefully passenger access systems as well, so that it didn't matter. Can I ask, is there a difference between small vessels and the larger vessels when it comes to the ports they can actually, there obviously will be between the very smaller ports, but are we at the stage of the flexibility that we require in, going forward, so that we do have the interchangeability? Because we're talking about door heights and roll on, roll off capacities, etc. I mean, we're getting to the stage where ferry science is overtaking rocket science in its complexity. But are we nearing a process where, or are we getting to the end of a process where most of the fleet, with certainly the more sizable vessels, are completely interchangeable along the West Coast?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Certainly, our goal is standardisation, and something we've certainly achieved both here with the 4 vessels in Turkey and these kind of 7 small vessels, and then looking into phase 2 is the standardisation ambition. So these 7 vessels, for example, will be completely interchangeable between the routes, and we're also looking that they would also be interchangeable with the Outer Hebrides routes as well. So I maybe hadn't mentioned it there, but what started off as the route categorisation aspect I was talking about. The design we've actually come up with for the phase 1 would also be compatible in terms of route categorisation for Sound of Barra and Sound of Harris. So ports is the more challenging aspect, I would say, given obviously there's various harbour authorities involved. But we certainly are trying to get there. For the small vessel phase 1, all the ports will be capable of taking one of these vessels. So they will be interchangeable. And likewise, with the 4 vessels in Turkey, they're the exact same ship, all 4. And they will be interchangeable. At this moment in time, they won't be interchangeable for every single kind of major port on the West Coast, but we are working towards that. So they will be certainly interchangeable between the Islay ports, Colonsay, Oban, the Little Minge ports. They would also be able to fit Stornoway and Ullapool as well. So there is only a few that would be outliers that we're looking to get to that stage, likes of Tyree, Col, Castleby.
Callum's going to respond to the fixed link. If I've got you all in line, so you can put your lights off.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nori, for that. The fixed links has indeed been discussed many times, and when we say discussed, it's just been discussed. So it has been part of the business case proposal going forward just now. The consideration of it. There is a need to replace the vessels, so before you could come to a decision on investment for fixed links. So the fact that the small vessels are progressing in front of that is because the need is there before anything could be in place fixed link wise. But the first stage in that would be to get a community view on a fixed link. What do the public think? What do the people of Harris, people of Hughes think of a fixed link? That'll be one of the first steps that we take. But I think when we come to our meeting in September, there'll be a bit more thought behind that, and hopefully a process to run alongside the vessels, and then a potential for fixed link across the Sound of Harris and the Sound of Barra.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I'm sure we've got members here who probably could contribute to the general trend towards where the public are with this. Yeah, I mean, the thing I noticed as well, Lewis, was the 16 ships getting built in Turkey. I was just wondering what that would look like in Port Glasgow.
Well, that's just one shipyard. There's various shipyards doing it. So,
Councillor MacLeod, Ian MacLeod, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lewis, for the updates on that. I was just kind of wondering, when you're talking about the Sound of Harris there, and I know my colleague in front of me from Harris won't like this, but it's a problematic run. It's tidal. MCA won't allow you to sail there in the dark or in foggy weather. Have we ever given consideration to changing that route? For example, Tarbert Lochmaddy, or Lochmaddy Tarbert, if you like, it's not tidal, it's not restricted in the hours of darkness. A mid-sized vessel running 3 or 4 times a day. Has that ever been considered?
Lewis?
So Yep, I can answer. I can have a go at answering this. So at the moment, it's not been considered as part of the small vessel phase 2. Our kind of remit from Transport Scotland is concentrating on Sound of Harris. What I would say that feedback could be added into, as Callum was alluding to earlier, is the community needs assessment that Transport Scotland will be doing, and hopefully they will be attending along with myself in September to come and have these types of discussions. I think what's also being considered, I'm not sure if it's in the kind of timetables yet, but is the potential of the new Little Minch vessels potentially carrying out that route that you mentioned as well, which obviously would change that. If that does happen as well, then that would change the whole capacity demand, and people then might opt for that rather than using the Bernary-Leverburgh route. So at this moment in time, no, but I would happily take that way back to Transport Scotland to look at that.
Thank you.
You happy with that, Ian?
Yes, I'm happy with that answer, yeah.
Right, the next person I had was Kenneth Cunningham Cloud. Can you put your light off, Councillor McNeill? I do have you in this.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Lewis, for the updates. It's good to hear there's some progress going on. As someone who travelled many years ago on what there used to be a Lochmaddy Tarbert on a Friday afternoon, which was very useful. In the days before, we did have a crossing on the Sound of Harris, and certainly it saved a double crossing of the Minch. It is a useful crossing, but I think one of the benefits of the Sound of Harris one is the economic benefit, not so much for the travelling public, but more for workers. There is a lot of traffic going across the Sound of Harris for businesses travelling up and down, and I think if we're going to spend 2 hours, or certainly 4 hours rather than 2 hours travelling, it's going to have a big impact on the working day for contractors. So I don't think it would be high on the priority list for any of us. I think what is high on the priority list, and something that I was going to take issue with you on, was one of the words you used there, that 2 vessels on the Sound of Harris would be ideal. It's not ideal. It's a necessity. That's what came across strongly at the consultations. It's that service just now is hugely under-resourced. We could do with 2 vessels on there just now all summer long. There's struggles to get folk across. People can't get across. We will be told, oh, it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks before you can get a booking across there. So right now we need 2 vessels on there, not in 4 years' time as it looks like at the moment. So it's not an ideal, it's a necessity, not just for the travelling public, but for, I say, the economics of the Western Isles, to get people moving back and forth across there. Having 2 vessels based on the burner side isn't really going to be any use, bearing in mind the daylight restrictions that we speak about. You have to have one starting on the north side in order to make the best of the day, because otherwise you're starting from the Harris side 2 hours later than on the other side. So without having one on either side, the 2 vessel, it'll provide more capacity, but doesn't really provide what we're looking for, and that's the improved economic benefit for the islands, as well as the transport options for people travelling back and forth. So I think we have to be, as the priority and as the first option that we need to be taking forward to Transport Scotland to get the money from them, is a vessel based on both sides of the Minch, on both sides of the Sound of Harris, as the standard. And I think we spoke about having that option of one of them going down to Barra to cover on the Sound of Barra route if necessary at short notice, but that the standard has to be the 2 based there, one in Leverburgh and one in Bernary, and ensure that the necessary port infrastructure in both sides is looked at to cover that.
Yep. Lewis, yep.
Yeah, no, thanks for the feedback. Happy to take that on board, and glad you mentioned that then, because that is going to be the biggest challenge to that, is the 2 vessels, is obviously the port infrastructure, because right now, we don't have anywhere on the Leverburgh side to tie a vessel up overnight. We do have a small berth that we can use, and the vessel uses it currently during tidal restrictions, but that's something obviously we're looking at with Callum and his team on that.
Yeah, well, the good thing is, going by your timescale, we've got 4 years to get that in place for when the ferry comes, because I think you're looking at probably 2029. So between now and then, I'm sure we could move on that. It's not like we have with our Dawson port where there is an unwilling port owner, and the councillor would be more than happy to work with CMAL in providing that infrastructure to take it forward if the funding came from Transport Scotland.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Working very closely together on that.
Okay, Kenneth. Okay, I had Angus McCormick next, I think, and then Ian McNeill.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm not a member of your committee, and thank you, Lewis, for your report. I think the one island that you possibly didn't mention was the island of Lewis, and that's what I would like to ask a question about. Many years ago, before the Loch Seaforth started on the route, there was a meeting in this very chamber. It was a packed chamber, and we had the front row here, all the officers from the different organisations associated with transport across the different minches. And the unanimous decision of that meeting was that there should be 2 ferries between Stornoway and Ullapool. And of course, we never ever got the 2 ferries. We got the Loch Seaforth. I would say we're very happy with the Loch Seaforth, but the Loch Seaforth is not a sufficient vessel for the year-long travel between this island and the mainland. And I am forever being told by people that they can't get on to the Loch Seaforth to get away to the mainland, especially at short notice when they've got urgent business on the mainland. They're having real difficulties getting onto the Loch Seaforth. So my question is, when are you going to have us build a second Loch Seaforth for the route between Stornoway and Ullapool? And you will know too of the significant pressures that there is going to be in the very near future on transportation to these islands with the major developments that are coming here in connection with renewables. So when is a second vessel going to be supplied for the Stornoway to Ullapool route?
There you go, Lewis, second vessel for Stornoway.
Currently, obviously, we at CMAL have been driven by the Islands Connectivity Plan and the Vessels and Ports Plan that Transport Scotland have in place. And of course, if you've seen that, there is no planning at this stage for a second vessel. What comes out of vessel cascading and redeployment, I'm unsure of. But at this stage, from a new vessel point of view, you know, we've obviously got the 4 vessels in Turkey, the small vessels. It's then on to the lottery replacement vessels for Mull. So at this moment in time, you know, there's no planning for a second vessel. There might be other options in the future, whether, as I say, redeployment or whatever. There is the added capacity with the second Little Minge vessel being added to the Outer Hebrides. I appreciate that's not into Stornoway, but other than that, there is no current plans at the moment. But I'd happily take that feedback away and pass it back to my colleagues at Transport Scotland.
I think there has been discussions between Transport Scotland and the Port Authority on it, Angus. We haven't been involved in that, but I heard Lewis, I think I heard at a meeting recently that had happened. Lawrence Kenny mentioned it. But,
okay. That's not something I'm aware of.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Lewis. Well, maybe you would take it back, and maybe we could have an update at our meeting in September as to what you're planning on doing in terms of a second vessel. And I don't want you to come back and tell me you don't have any plans for a second vessel.
I'm hoping that'll be my colleagues at Transport Scotland that come back and give you the message. So, no, thanks. No problem. I'm happy to take that away.
Okay, no pressure, Lewis. Councillor McNeill.
Thank you, Chair. My point question is also to do with a capacity issue with an expectation that the Lewis is going to be retired next year, possibly, and that the likely replacements is either going to be the Klansmen or the Hebrides, has been pointed in. There's a big fear in Barra that the capacity that they're currently using with the Lewis will no longer be available with the Klansmen or the Hebrides, and that the Finlagan would be a much better fit for Barra. We keep on bringing this up, but we don't seem to be getting anywhere. Have you got any updates on that?
No, I don't really have an update. Obviously, I'm aware of the plans for the Lewis, and I know it's not fixed yet, but you are correct that Klansmen and Hebrides, one of them most likely to be covering the route. I'm happy to take that away. It would mainly be Calmac that would deal with obviously about the capacity. So I'm happy to take that, or maybe David, if he returns, can answer questions on that. In terms of what I do know in terms of Finlagan versus Klansmen / Hebrides, the capacity I don't think is much different. I think vehicle deck space is slightly better in Finlagan because there's no centre casing, so you don't have as much restrictions for staggering vehicles. But certainly I do know when Finlagan has been out on the kind of outer Hebrides routes, mainly the Sky Triangle, the Little Minge routes, that she's not performed as well as the Hebrides and the Klansmen from a kind of seakeeping point of view. So I know there's obviously that factor that's maybe been taken into account by Calmac when they're looking at the redeployment of vessels. But happy to take that away, and obviously we can come back with an answer.
Lewis, Councillor McNeill raised this at the Ferry Stakeholder Group as well. Your colleague Chris Fisher was present, so and there were colleagues from Calmac there as well. So I would anticipate that it's been looked at, but just make sure that it is something that appears. Yeah. Okay. No more questions. I think Paul was first. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
And then Ray, and then I'll let you back in.
Okay. Thank you for the update, Lewis. My points were for both Mr. Hamill's. So I'll raise one. In Lochboysdale the other day, it was great to see the Lord of the Isles actually back in service. And the place was buzzing, the ferry was full, there was people spending money locally. It's what Lochboysdale has been crying out for. So I think I just needed to make that point. When the ferry's there and it runs, it's used and absolutely beneficial. So, you know, even a 3-day break is causing a lot of heartache for communities locally. So I'll just make that point, and it's not specifically for this Mr. Hamill. But this Mr. Hamill, the replacement for the Lord of the Isles, it's slightly disappointing that there's been a bit of a delay on the progress for the replacement for the Lord of the Isles. I thought that had progressed quite well so far, despite no funding being in place. But now that there's funding in place, there seems to be a bit of a hold-up. Suspicious minds in UST are concerned about any delays to this piece of work. I think the Gassay work as well, that's been long trailed. We should really be at the point now where we know exactly what's going to be happening with both of those things. So an update in September on both of those is going to be really, really important for the communities of UST. Thanks. Yeah, I had lots of questions for the other Mr. Hamill. The Sound of Barra extra sailings, you know, we've not seen any movement on that. And of course the compensation scheme, which I suppose is Transport Scotland HIE issue, but these are all issues that are coming to my attention relating to ferries. Thank you.
I think the extra sailings on the Sound of Barra is looking kind of positive. I mean, Calmac did in, I think, May 2022 put forward proposals on double crewing, and I think Diane Burke's been quite keen to see that happening, and I think that potentially will happen. You know,
it'll be great to see an announcement on that. Yeah.
But I'm more positive about that. We've been fighting for that one for 10 years now, so yeah. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Lewis, in terms of the Lottie and disappointment and looking at it stretching a bit.
No, not really, no. Obviously happy to take it all on board, but frustrating for ourselves as well, because ideally we want to be getting out to procurement for the vessel and get it, you know, awarded early next year. So let's hope we can obviously get an update soon. You'd mentioned an update in September. Hopefully we can even give a written update, you know, prior to that. That would hopefully beneficial.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
And I maybe should have said at the start, me and David are absolutely no relation to each other. Just happen to have the same second name.
Yeah, you're going to be busy in September anyway. Ray, you had...
Thank you, Chair. Not on your committee. Yeah, I remember the meeting in 2014, I think it was, with the two ferries was the unanimous choice of the community, but anyway, such as happened. I wonder, I may have missed it, but the Alfred, which was hired, or is still being hired maybe, what are the what's the idea going forward with a reserve ferry? Because there's always when one of the ferries breaks down, and hopefully in the future with all these wonderful new ferries that won't be breaking down, but that when a ferry breaks down, there's a complete shambles because everything's got to be switched round and sent to different ports and all the rest of it. There doesn't seem to be a reserve ferry available. The only other thing I would say, roll-on tunnels, not roll-on, but let's look to the future.
Right, Lewis, I believe you got the Alfred till October, as far as I know.
Yeah, so obviously CMAL aren't involved with Alfred. That is directly between Calmac and Pentland Ferries and Transport Scotland, but I believe it is October. What I can say about relief vessels is that with the additional vessel for the Little Minge, that is an additional major vessel to the fleet. So there will, of course, then mean that there should be a relief vessel. There historically has been relief vessels, but what normally happens is they get added to routes and then they just never go back to being relief vessels. But with the planning and the redeployments, there would be a spare major vessel that could be used.
But the plan, I think, is to have the Finlagan as a spare vessel, and Councillor McNeill clearly wants it for Barra.
At the moment, Finlagan is kind of headlined as a spare vessel, which again is kind of about halfway through its life, so it would be a good spare vessel. That is also maybe why Calmac are looking at that versus Clansman Hebrides, because it is 10 metres shorter, so it would be more flexible for getting around the network and into the various ports, whereas obviously Clansman Hebrides maybe a wee bit more restricted for some ports.
Right, I'm going to let Duncan in first thing you had you say earlier, if that's okay. I don't want you to give me a row, can you, Duncan?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I'm just looking at, the local economy here, and I've heard nothing about what's going to happen. There's over £6 billion of investment coming in renewable energy, and not following on from what Councillor McCormick was saying in relation to two ferries for Stornoway. It's clear that it should be discussed, and certainly Calmac should be in the mix with Transport Scotland on what is going to happen in Stornoway, because we're not talking about a long period away. I would say probably in the next 18 months that things will start appearing, depending on what the planning process, how we move through planning and the various projects that are coming off. And my understanding is that there will be in excess of 20 Arctics per day needing to come into Stornoway. So what is the plan? That is coming. So there must be some plan either with CMAL or with Transport Scotland on how that's going to be addressed, because the Scottish Government have already had in excess of 30 million, from those offshore wind projects that have been awarded, and they can't just sit on that money and say we're proceeding with something like £6+ billion investment and not have considered how all that investment and the knock-on effect it's going to have on transport links to Lewis here. So I would expect Councillor Robertson did make reference to someone having been in discussion with Stornoway Port Authority, but at the end of the day, this is imminent and something must be on the table for making sure that the transport link is developed as a matter of urgency.
I don't know if you want to comment. I'd heard Lewis, Lawrence Kenny mention discussions between Transport Scotland and Stornoway Port Authority at a meeting recently, but we haven't been involved. I don't know if Seymour or Calmac have been involved either.
Yeah, no, we haven't been involved. So I would just kind of reiterate the same response as earlier, that I'm happy to take that away and discuss with Transport Scotland. I'm not sure if maybe Lawrence was alluding to, you know, like an additional freight sailing or something like that, or a dedicated freight service, so that the C4 was purely dedicated to passengers and cars. So no, I'm happy to take that away, but I haven't heard anything.
Can you do that as a matter of urgency then, Lewis,
Yes.
and get back to me directly so I can talk to Councillor McInnes about it and others who have an interest?
No problem.
One final point on that. The Lost Seaford can't. Sorry. One final point on that is the Lost Seaford can't cope with the volume that's being projected to come across into Stornoway. There are talks about, you know, another link span being developed out at Ornish so that wouldn't come into the traffic wouldn't be coming through the town. But at the end of the day, this is an urgent matter that needs to be addressed, and I would say the Comhairle should be at the heart of discussions on it.
I see. I've got you in order, so you've obviously got something to say, Leader.
I do. Thank you very much, Chair. So I was at the Deepwater Port Advisory Board meeting with the Deputy First Minister, and it was raised there that this is a priority. We don't want any obstacles to get in the way of any future developments, and I think this is a potential huge obstacle. So it was suggested that there would be a follow-up meeting with SSE. Obviously, are going to be one of the first people to go with the converter station. So they were meeting with Transport Scotland and Calmac to take that forward. So I think that's probably what Lawrence Kenny was referring to. Yeah. But there was an ask from the Deputy First Minister that we form a bit of a working group, including HIE, the Comhairle, SSE, Cal, Transport Scotland. But as far as I'm aware, that's not been agreed quite yet. There's been some correspondence backwards and forwards, but so we'll try and get an update on that one.
Okay, thanks for that. All appreciate it. I'm going to let you were next, Kenneth, and then Norman. But
yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to back up Councillor MacDonald's point about the tunnels, having seen firsthand a few months ago in the Faroes, the huge economic and increase in population by having tunnel and fixed links between islands. I think it's something that we do need to be working hard. Yes, the ferries now, but I think going forward, we have to look at these tunnels that link the islands to try and open up our transport links and make them secure all year round. And ferries are good, but obviously the weather has an impact. And we know that the Sound of Harris is only daylight. So having a fixed link that would make it up 24/7. So I think it is something we need to urgently look at, and it does provide economic and also population regeneration benefits as well.
okay, thank you, Kenneth. Norman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. Yeah, following on from what Councillor McInnes said there about the increase in freight on the route. I think generally the whole of the renewables project and the infrastructure required and the traffic that's going to be generated by this for the next, I don't know, 2 to 7 years, and the knock-on effect it's going to have on our own island infrastructure. I think that the Chief Executive and the leader will be bringing this to the relevant forum just because it needs to be better thought out, because of the knock-on effect it's going to be on our ability to get on and off the island because of the lack of capacity on these routes. And it's not just Caledonia McBrain, it'll be Logan Air as well. There needs to be a road, I think, built coming in from the new link span out at the Deepwater Port. But I think the Port Authority have already had a study commissioned on the increased volume of traffic. Well, I don't think I've seen it. And I think 20 additional Arctics a day is on the low side, Duncan. It's significantly north of 20. So I think this is a business opportunity as well, Lewis, for Caledonia McBrain. I don't know if you've got any spare ferries knocking around or any freight ferries knocking about, but there's an awful lot of traffic coming. And it needs to be managed, and it needs not to impact on our ability to get on off the island in the normal course of island life. The worry is for most of us that we won't be able to get on and off the ferry just to go to the mainland in the course of holidays and visiting and shopping and whatever it is, and that it might impact. I would like to think that our suppliers will be pre-booked on Caledonia McBrain, but I think it's a business opportunity for you. But it's certainly something that we need to be thought out well in advance. As Councillor McCormick said, we need this managed, and we need it managed well, and we need the additional capacity so that it doesn't negatively impact on everything else that we normally would take for granted in the course of a normal week, month, etc. in island life. So again, I'm just saying it could be an opportunity for Caledonia McBrain.
I don't know if you want to comment. Obviously, you're Seamal, not Calmac, Lewis, but yeah.
No, but we obviously do own the vessels, and no, absolutely. We have. What I will say, just you said about second-hand vessels, we have tried multiple times to buy second-hand vessels, and we've not been successful in a number of cases. That has included some freight vessels, primarily for the Northern Isles because of the freight constraints there. But obviously, then looking at what that could be doing, particularly for routes like Stornoway, Ullapool. So, out of all the vessels we've looked at, we've managed to purchase one, which has been the Loch Fraser. So, for various reasons, and a lot of them have got to trying to buy them stage, but it's not straightforward. So, no, happy to take all the feedback regarding the increase in capacity in second vessels. Away.
Okay, anybody else got any?
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to come back in again. I'm still not a member of your committee. The point that I wanted to make finally is that the decision on the interconnector to these islands, the 1,800 megawatt interconnector, was taken by the Scottish UK governments in conjunction with SSEN. In the national interest. Now, if it's in the national interest, then they should be looking to all of the issues associated with that particular development, and a further ferry on this route, it must be part of in the national interest and funded by the government. No second-hand ferries. Thank you very much. Let's have another Loch Seaforth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. I'm sure you've heard that point clearly now from Councillor McCormick, and that you're prioritising it, Lewis.
Yeah, got that on board, yeah.
Oh, Councillor McLean.
I think I should just resign from this committee, because if you're not on the committee, you get a better chance of speaking, Mr.
All right.
I've got this light on, and that we should replace the chair.
You're not the first person to say that. That's probably the last either.
I would have a seconder in that, yeah. Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. Yeah, I absolutely fully back up what Councillor McCormick has said, and I'm glad he actually said these words. We haven't been speaking about Lewis, because the present situation of Calmac serving Stornoway and Ullapool is not functional. I'm giving you an example. 2 or 3 weeks ago, a lady from Ullapool was coming up to visit relatives, and she landed at Ullapool, and the vessel was cancelled because of weather. Well, we can't do anything about that. She could not get a booking on the Seaforth until the following Saturday, that Monday to Saturday, to get back here onto Lewis. The system is not working. In other words, if it's clogged up, it's clogged up. But however, I've had reports as well, and I firsthand, I have seen this for myself. I was traveling on the Seaforth to Ullapool, and a gentleman came to me and he said to me, I tried to book on this ferry today with my car. I says, how come you didn't get on? They said to me it was fully booked. Well, I've been on this ferry, and I says, I'm on this ferry down below, and it's half empty. Now, I'm even up to last week or the week before, that is still happening on the Seaforth ferry. People are looking for bookings to get either across from Ullapool or from here to Ullapool. And they're finding that they're being told that it's full. And when people are going on, it's half empty. I'm sure the chair has seen these photos. There is fundamentally something wrong. And this is in you, Lewis. I'm voicing this opinion in order to back up what Councillor McCormack says. We need a second ferry on here, because what we've got at the moment is not coping with what we have. We've talked yesterday about the explosion of tourism. That is taken off. It's not coping with tourism. It's not coping with locals. Before any of us, and I endorse exactly what Mr. McInnes says, I'm surprised that it's not just talking about what's going to happen in 2 years' time or 5 years, going on for another 4 or 5 years. Where is the planning? That's what I'm going to ask. Where is there a plan? Are we not only talking about, is there a plan for what's going to happen in 2 years' time with the explosion of vehicles using Ullapool to Stornoway? So that's a question. But my question is this: are we as a council advocating for an extra ferry on the Stornoway to Ullapool route? That's my question to you, Chair.
Yes, and we've had these discussions with the Stornoway Port Authority, Colin. There is a ports and vessels plan, as Lewis indicated as well, currently, which has been circulated to all members. I don't know if you've all read it, including the island connectivity plan, etc. All comes down to funding. And you point on the Stornoway Ullapool, yes, but bearing in mind what the leader and Councillor MacLeod and others have seen in their own backyard, we cannot compare the two, really, when it comes to a service.
Absolutely. Yeah, I fully endorse that.
Yeah. So
but I'm asking Lewis, there is no plan for a second ferry for Stornoway to Ullapool in what he was answered to Councillor McCormack in his first question.
No, it's
not in the plan.
No, it's not in Transport Scotland or Scottish Government.
Yeah. So we're not getting through to Transport Scotland, are we? Or to Scottish Government? Or are they dumb?
Don't even go there.
I'll leave you with.
Sorry. Yeah, it's hard going, Colin, I can assure you. From resilience plans to everything else. The reality is, and I'm sure the Chief Executive will agree, until we get voices at the top table, we have difficulties ahead of us, really. And we made every effort to get people onto these boards who understand lifeline services, islands, problems we face. Decisions are left to people who do not understand, when a ferry is taken off, And Paul and Ian and company, have had a very, very difficult time over the last few years. Now you're
been doing a lot of work, Mr. Robertson, and well done up to now. But you need more. You need to do more.
Yeah. Nice to see you back anyway, Paloma. I missed you at the last meeting, I have to say. Right, anybody else got anything to add? No? Right, Lewis, I hope you've been well entertained and you've got a lot of actions to take back with you anyway. So we'll see you in September, but if some of the actions could be dealt with between now and September, that would be
helpful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No problem. Thanks very much for having me.
So thanks very much, Lewis.
Thank you.
Right, mae te chau yn cwsbyr y cog as clerici fwlan so fwn agus constructor. A nash on fisrach a horst sechat na bullen vleanen me jedig an daar wieles kede die het koke die het pianwegessen na runje konle koren dianetes vreem oprug hopbessig realtes in het al. Daar wil tria die het kede die het zo'n unet krachig zo woon spun structure. Wie niet kalmach kan ik zo'n als fikti kisten se be.
Thank you, Chair. The report in front of you has a number of sections in it regarding different aspects of the business plan and where actions are aligned with the corporate strategy. The first one really looking at on risk management in relation to strategic risk is on climate change, and we've had some discussions over the last number of weeks at corporate management team and at budget board regarding where we are with climate change adaptation and emission reduction. That'll keep on coming back to members in various stages, but I think it's fair to say that every local authority in the country is looking at how they can comply with the Scottish Government duties on climate change, and we'll be giving you regular reports on where the council is with that. We know as well that there are some issues that are just arising just now with our transport links and in relation to flooding and other aspects of the road network, which we'll be considering as well in due course. As I said, the actions, there's an update there with the actions aligned to the corporate strategy. I won't take too much time over that. Just focusing on the local government benchmarking framework outcomes. So these are indicated in the appendix to the report. There is a narrative on the targets and the coreless performance, but if I can maybe just highlight some of them, just looking at the ones in red. I've got my colleague Colin Fraser here as well. I can add to any questions on these, but when you look at the cost of waste collection and waste disposal in the islands, generally we're going to have a higher cost than in mainland Scotland anyway, because of our rurality and the lack of disposal routes for recycling and other aspects of regarding the logistics of waste disposal. If you then look at the figures relating to road maintenance, so they go into the percentage of certain roads that will require maintenance treatment. You'll see that under the A-class roads and B-class roads, you're looking at ambers for these, but when you look at the C-class road, that the target is well below the Scottish average. So in terms of that reflecting what you're seeing under your wheels, we have really been prioritising A-class roads, and you'll see what we're doing just now with the additional money we're getting. So we are seeing a deterioration in C-class roads. Although unclassified roads are showing as green, there is a marked deterioration there as well. It's just that the target is different there for in relation to the Scottish average. But one thing I will draw to your attention is where we are seen to perform well, and that is in the cost of maintenance per kilometre for roads. You'll see that we're sitting green, and that really reflects the amount of money we're spending on the roads, not how much we need to spend on the roads. So we are well below the Scottish average of the amount of money that we're actually spending on the roads. So that target kind of works another way for us. So that's, I don't know if there's any questions on these just now.
Kies dit in is be? Neil, good morning.
Yeah, thanks, Calvin, for that. I'm just saying that on that one, presumably the reason we're so low is because we're not getting enough money to do the work we want to do. And if we had more money, that percentages would be closer on the
Yes.
overall maintenance. So it's not because we are on top of it in the roads, because we're not getting enough money from the Scottish Government in order to do all the maintenance we need to do.
Yes, that's the point I'm making. We would spend more money on our roads to actually deal with the other indicators, and that's a deterioration in the A, B, C, and unclassified roads.
Because it's quite a significant difference, isn't it? 5 million as opposed to 30, almost 14 million. And that's largely, and our roads are suffering. And I think it just strengthens the case for us to be trying to get more money out of the Scottish Government for roads.
Councillor McNeill.
Thank you, Chair. I am still a member of your committee as well. I would like to express my appreciation of the work that the maintenance, road maintenance work that's been done in Barra in the last few weeks. It's made a big difference, and it was much needed. And I believe a lot of this is following our meeting in Battersea last year when the council went down last April, and things have been quite low in Barra for a while with the situation with the school and the hospital, but in recent weeks and we've had good news on that front, and we're looking just for completion of that. So I would just like to express my thanks to everybody, not just Carl and his team, but the Con as a whole for opening their eyes when they were in Barra, and taking things forward. And thank you all.
Richard, hi. Red letter day home could you do? Sugar. Oh, have we could yeah, just could you that? Ray, can you put it? Could yeah, it's always Ray.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Carla. Just a question. I think you're aware of this anyway. There was a question that came about Community Council regarding a bridge in Melbourne Bor. I think they were in contact by email. I'm just asking. They were a wee bit worried about the bridge and that, but it seems to be fine. But if this bridge sort of became unusable, do we have a contingency plan to sort of say, for example, well, put it this way, if it did become unusable, it would cut off a lot of houses from getting to the main road and that, and they wouldn't probably get out of the area. Do we have a contingency plan in place for not just that, but all other bridges through the islands to get them fixed sort of ASAP if something like that did come about?
Comhairle said it, John Ormond.
All right.
I think the really good example of that is Bernera Bridge. The planning we have in place is we do our bridge inspections as per the whether they're 2 yearly or 5 yearly inspections. In terms of Melbourne Bor, the inspection just now shows yes, there's deterioration. However, there's not going to be deterioration to the fact that you can't use it. It's not going to rapidly collapse, if that's the best terminology for that bridge. If anything was to happen, there may be a weight restriction have to be put on it. So if you take the Bernera example, then there was a weight restriction on that bridge until we could replace the bridge. So as you know as well from your own experience, there are many bridges across the Western Isles, and you can't always legislate for how quickly one could deteriorate, but I would reassure people that the inspection process does take place.
Oh yeah, I know that.
The structural engineer has a very good handle on where the priorities are required. So there is assurance there that there is no immediate concern in terms of collapse or cutting off a community there in Melbourne, and should it deteriorate further and become a priority, it would be dealt with.
Okay, thanks.
Ray?
Thanks, Stuart, for letting me in, and Alan for letting me in. He doesn't mind me jumping in. The actual figures here, there's underspends. Are they carried forward to this year?
Sorry, Councillor Mackenzie. I
Sorry,
stopped at the end of that section to see if there was any questions on that. I was going to come on to the finance side, but I can cover that just now.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah. So, yes, there has been. I mean, the budget for all services and assets and infrastructure is about just over 20 million, and there has been a slight underspend within 1%, and there will be a report going to PNR seeking authority to spend that underspend on some priorities within the department. So we are looking to see if we can use that for further investment in our IT resilience, and strangely enough, on further work and bridge inspections. So that report will be going to PNR.
Okay, Gordon, you had your hand up as well, Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's probably been answered. It was just drawing attention to the strategic risk 16, you know, the failure to adapt to the effects of climate change. And I'd seen that it's a persistent, high-rated strategic risk, even after implementing controls, you know, with potential impacts on community infrastructure needs. So I was going to ask about detail on specific actions being taken to mitigate this risk, you know, particularly in relation to protecting, you know, the critical infrastructure like the roads, causeways and bridges, you know, and how these measures were being prioritised within the 19.5 million budget just to ensure resilient communities. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the adaptation to climate change, or indeed to flood risk management, is something that we have a keen eye on, so to speak. We are aware that there are times, even just now, where some of our communities get cut off for a period, be it due to weather conditions, flooding, etc. So these are indeed our immediate priorities. And it's about identifying these and understanding what impact they have on communities and indeed services, not just the councils, but other public services. So that's part of the work we're actually doing just now in working with others to come up with a climate adaptation plan. So that's at the very early stages. I know there's areas we're aware of just now, and we're looking at whatever opportunities we can to fund and resource these. Now, it may not always be a physical intervention that we can afford to undertake, and it may be that you're looking at warning systems or barriers, things like that actually prevent crossing of a causeway for a period of time. We have to understand the frequencies and the impact on these communities. But I think one of the messages coming out just now is that we won't be able to hold back the sea, so to speak. There are areas where we are going to lose coastline. Our transport infrastructure, roads, etc., are going to be compromised. We have to think of how we adapt to that rather than try to have protective measures in all cases. And that's a conversation that'll have to be had with at a community level. So it's not just all about investing to protect, it's about adapting as well. So again, Councillor Murray, it's at the early stages, although we are aware of some immediate concerns.
It is an issue we've raised with two cabinet secretaries as well, Gordon, and myself and Callum have had meetings with the Transport Scotland flooding team as well. So we're not just sitting on our hands on this. I don't know if you want to add to the discussions we've had on that.
Thanks a lot, Chair. Thank Mr Mackenzie for that answer, which gives reassurance. So I look forward to seeing the climate adaptation plan. And does he think that this will reduce the risk? I hope it will, but
the climate adaptation plan is not something that's going to be rustled up in a matter of weeks or months, or it's going to be something that comes together over a matter of years in different forms, because we can very much think strategically about what the impacts are going to be to our infrastructure and to services. But it's about how you actually adapt, and there are so many aspects to it. Some examples would be, well, if you have sea level rise and over a period of time that's going to encroach further inland, what effect is that going to have on the ecology? So you may have freshwater lochs that suddenly become brackish. What impact does that have? So there are so many aspects of this that the climate change adaptation plan is not going to mitigate against all risks. And we may see that an adaptation may be quite significant to some communities. So if there is croftland or grazing land being taken up by coastal erosion, if you can't protect that land, then what's your answer? So that then comes into the specifics of each community and what the options are available to them. So would you look at reclaiming land further inland, etc.? So I don't want to send an expectation here that we'll have a climate adaptation plan in a matter of weeks or months, or even in the next year or so, but it is something that will develop along with the Comhairle and other public sectors' understanding of what climate change impacts may be.
Okay, Gordon,
yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, thanks very much. As I say, I look forward to the plan, and I understand it is climate adaptation plan. But thanks.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Colin? No.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much for that update there, Cal. I think it's really, really important that we know that this work's been ongoing for a while. I think you've been doing an awful lot of good work on this. A bit of focus over the next couple of years, as agreed at our last committee series, to kind of bring this into a climate adaptation plan. I think it's really, really important. There's one thing you touched on there, and that was about the environment and the landscape, not just the infrastructure. And I know Usheen's listened to Professor Stuart Angus on a number of occasions, and I think the work that he did in the past was really, really useful. And he actually had proposals for taking things forward. So I think some engagement with him on the potential plan going forward will be actually quite vital to the future of the islands, because it's not just about, like I say, the infrastructure, it's about how we live and where we live. So yeah, thank you for taking this forward, and I look forward to seeing further developments.
Thank you, Leader. It's what I'm trying to stress just now as well, I know you understand, is the complexity of matters, and the specific discussions we had with government ministers and officials has been along the lines that we need to think holistically around used as a specific example and to what all the impacts would be, because you can sometimes, when you look to deal with these matters, find you're dealing with different sections or different teams, whereas when you look at climate change specifically for used, there are so many factors that and people and organisations that need to be considered, and part of our plea was for that joined up approach to climate change.
Very much.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Cala, for the ongoing work you're doing with roads on such a limited budget. I think we're all pretty grateful, and your roads team reacts pretty quickly. I know myself and Finlay are very grateful for the quick intervention when they're on the island, if they're not working, as Councillor McNeill said. It's of great benefit to see them out fixing roads. And anybody who complains about the roads in the Western Isles, I say one thing to them: drive through Skye and go off the main road. It's just, you know, some of the conditions of some of the roads, some of the other authorities, it make us look good. That's the bottom line. So well done with that. I think when we're talking about the impact of climate change on coastal environment, that's going to be as nothing as compared with the impact of building 3 terrestrial wind farms and 2 offshore wind farms is going to have. Following on from the discussion we had on capacity earlier on, we're going to have a hell of a hit on our road network over the next couple of years. And that has to be factored into the spend that we're going to have and how we're going to mitigate against that destruction on the road network. And we're going to have to try and factor in some kind of cost to the user. So when it comes to the next couple of years, I'm sure you're pretty aware that we're going to have heavier road traffic usage, particularly down, as Councillor Morrison has previously indicated, down to Lochs. We're going to have it going up to Tolstan across the Barrows Moor, and these roads are going to get hammered. And we have to extract some kind of toll from the developers. And we don't have the infrastructure or the legal framework to do so. It's going to be difficult to get them well, I think that they might agree to replace the roads. We were in previous discussions with another one of the developers about replacing the roads the way they found them. It would be nice to get them to replace the roads to a slightly better condition than we found them, but we are going to have an issue over the next 5, 7, however many years with this multi-billion-pound infrastructure on our road network. And we have to make sure that at the end of it, we have no worse a situation with our roads than we have currently. I don't know how confident you are that that will be the case, Cala, but I think it needs. We're all aware of what's happening and what's going to be happening, and we just need to make sure that at the end of the day, we don't end up in a worse situation than we started in, because that would be a failure on our part. There's a lot of money going to get spent on these islands, and we need to extract some kind of toll to keep our infrastructure intact, if not better.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Yes, we're well aware of the potential impacts, and we have a meeting 2 weeks' time with the combined developers. One, to put that very point across to them. We have had some positive discussions individually with some of the developers to make them aware of, one, the damage that could be caused during construction, but also, I mean, they do recognise that they would have to repair as found. However, there are also the other consideration of traffic volumes and where the construction traffic will be running and what impact that could have on basically the day-to-day commute traffic that we may have. So we'll be dealing with understanding better the traffic volumes, the impact of these loads on the structure, but also with some of the component movements, what alignment improvements may be required. And it's only really going to work when we get the full picture from all the developers, because what you don't want to have is that one developer says, well, that wasn't us, it was another one. So they all need to understand, one, it's a collective issue that they all face, but also there could be a lot of benefit in them working together from the point of view that if some component deliveries need to make improvements to some road alignments, then it's going to benefit another developer as well. So the fact that we can focus in on the areas they're all working on collectively, understand their collective transport plans, and then the impact. But I agree with you, there is going to be an impact, and it's how we deal with that. And if I can assure the members that we are having these discussions with all the developers to that extent just now.
You're Mr. Solus Comhairle. Staff are.
Yeah, thanks for Stava. Yeah, thanks for that, Calla. Yeah, I think maybe within the planning application system, you know, we can address the restoration of the road at least back to where it was. You know, the survey done prior to the development starting and a survey done afterwards, and then, you know, an agreement made. I know we've discussed this with one of the developers, but particularly around the Stornoway area, where 3 or 4 developers might be using the same roads at the same time, like I said there, who's responsible for what? That's what's going to get into a bit of a quagmire. So I think we need to be very sure-footed in how we're dealing with these companies and making them responsible for the repair to the necessary repair to the infrastructure, because of the weight loads that's and soft peat in some of the roads as well in the outlying areas. So we're going to have destruction to the roads, and we need to ensure that we've got the capacity to get costed repairs, well, not paid for by us.
Stefan. Thanks very much, Chair. I know you told me not to speak last night, so I've been keeping quiet. All morning. Just a quick question to Calla. Just back to the climate adaptation plan, and I know you said that I know it's going to take a few years, not something to prepare. And you said we're at the early stages, and we need to consult, obviously. How are we going to consult? How do we engage with communities? Who are we talking to? And also in terms of adaptation, you know, like there are small communities like the Balashir project. All the time we mention the causeway. You know, how it affects. I know it's a small number, so the metrics when you look at the economics of how it affects that small number of people may be different to a bigger population, but still an effect to that population itself. And it's not just about the road, it's about health services and different things. So in terms of priorities, you don't have an abundance pot of money that you can do everything, and we have to prioritize, and sometimes the funding need to be sought from the Scottish government or something. Do we have a priority list of infrastructure that we need to repair, that even without out with our budget at the moment, but whenever we're speaking to the government or something, that we keep hammering that about? And
Well, we have thought of some priorities in relation to the community renewal funding. So that is to do with resilience of the road network in Uist. And that really reflects where we see as being a priority just now from a roads infrastructure point of view. So as far as current priorities, that would reflect the current priorities in Uist.
That's a short-term priority. I'm talking in terms of medium and long-term priority.
Medium and long-term, again, that'll come out with the adaptation plan as we understand more about we have the dynamic coast information from SEPA looking at where there could be coastal impacts, and we have the flood maps, flood protection maps from SEPA as well, which would be a useful base for then saying, okay, where are the impacted areas? But then you need to understand a bit more information about how often, how deep, what's the impact. So that'll be the way these priorities will then be assessed. Because if you have a road that's flooding maybe 300 mil deep for 2 hours, 3 times a year, you can live with that. You may find other areas where the flooding impacts for, say, more than a day, a couple of times a month. You know, and then you then look at the services impacted there for how does that affect education, how does it affect home care, etc. So there's a lot of work behind it. and that's the way these priorities will emerge. There may be other things I haven't mentioned just now that will emerge as priorities in the future as well. Yeah. So, as I said, the adaptation plan is something that's going to be built up over years, but then we have a good idea of what the priorities are just now. We have a good idea of what the impacts are just now, but we have to understand more of the longer term impacts. I hope that answers partially your question.
Just in terms of engagement as well, obviously, yeah, we do have an idea where our priorities, but sometimes you only speak to the community themselves. They may have different views of what the priority should be. So what I'm saying is, how do we engage? Who do we engage with? Do we just sit in here and do our priorities, or do we review them and discuss them with the communities themselves and engage them in them?
Yes, that's going to be a very important part of developing any plan. There are a number of pilot schemes going on just now, and various other bodies being set up at community level to understand the impacts in specific areas. So there's the Muire's project for Barra, there's the Carbon Neutral Islands project initiative for Barra as well. We've done a bit of work with the youth committees communities through the Outer Hebrides Community Planning Partnership, the climate change working group there. There's Outer Hebrides COP2 planned for September this year, and these are generally taking on board a lot of the community's view, and the communities will be very much part of this process going forward as well. Other areas are learning from pilot studies and the way they're going forward with some of these initiatives as well. So we've got access to there's a public sector climate adaptation network where we learn from other case studies what other communities are doing. So a lot of it's about sharing, and a lot of it is about understanding the community perspective on this as well, whether it's the resilience for that particular area, or is it the type of lifestyle they have, be it crofting, crops, that kind of thing. If you're going to lose some arable land, how do you adapt to that? So it is a subject that's going to develop, and you're right, Councillor Racine, taking in the communities along with you is part of it, but it's not just the Comhairle on its own.
No.
We need to understand the full holistic picture with other agencies as well. So I only mentioned the impact on our services. There'd be an impact to health services and others as well.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kella. Following on from what Nori was saying there about speaking to developers on that. I mean, and thanks for your reply. I did send you an email regarding the Barras Muir and the proposed haul route they're proposing. And you came back to me to say they are possibly going to float the road on the Muir, which is a wee bit worrying, to be honest. But what I was going to say was, I went to these consultations, that were on, and I went to the one in the Barras Hall, and I asked the fellow how they were going to build the road, and he was saying, we'll be taking it to the hard. So, and I said, okay. So where are you going to get the rock from? Oh, the Stornoway Quarry and the Sharpest Quarry. So what I'm saying is, yes, get the developers together, and they've got to decide what they're going to do, because they seem to be giving out different answers to different people. Thank you, Chair. Sorry. I know one other thing. I noticed the whole route there, and it does, and it bypasses. They're going to say they're going to leave a cycle track at the end of it. That does bypass through Barras up towards Upper Barras, which doesn't really bother me. But there are services there that get a lot of cyclists. The local shops and all that, and up the west side Grinyavat. So they would possibly end up losing out if that has been the case. Just something to mention to that. Thank you.
Thanks for these observations, and these are the kind of discussions we're having with specific developers.
Yeah.
the view that a haul road could be left as a cycle track would have implications to ourselves as the Comhairle in terms of maintaining it into future. It wouldn't. It would be nice to have a brand new road between Stornoway and Barvas, but it doesn't look like that's going to be likely with the way they were planning the haul road anyway. But your point about the local services, that's some of the points we're making back to them to say, well, rather than having a cycle track, which should be maybe used by tourists, but not as a normal travel route for commuting between Barvas and Stornoway for maybe yourself, you would take your bike into work. Or,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
But from that point of view, there are other probably more important places to look at. So if you were to look at the local school and say, well, what would you do there? Well, in terms of walking and cycling, then you would probably have the cycle paths along the road and along the village. So we've been making these points to them to say that, you know, leaving this may be welcome from that perspective, but there are other things. But right as well, when you're on about where's the rock coming from, we need to understand better from them where the rock source is, how much they're going to take, if indeed they're going to take everything down to hard, what they're going to do with the peat. So we need to understand that from our own perspective, because then we'll have an idea of what's going to be on the road and what damage is going to be done on the road. But some of the meetings so far have been quite positive in that they're listening at this stage, and having everybody together, I think that'll be a benefit. So thank you for your observations, Councillor McBride.
Ms. McCaramick.
You're very generous, Chair. I just would like to follow on from what just the discussion we've just had with regard to roads. And I mean, I expressed a much stronger view of what we should be looking for in terms of roads, other than just bringing them back to the condition that they're in, because the condition that they're in, Cala, as you know yourself, is not what we would like it to be. And I do think myself that the developers have a responsibility to leave something for the benefit of the people for the future. And just restoring the roads to the level that they are at this present time doesn't do it for me. I don't think that's satisfactory, and I made that very clear to Northland when they were here. I mean, the idea of cycle tracks just a joke, really. I mean, who on earth wants a cycle track? What we want are decent roads, and I do feel that they have an obligation to expend a significant sum of money to benefit the people of these islands into the future. I think that they have a responsibility to do that. I mean, they're trying to get away, for example, with giving us 5,000 per megawatt. Now that's buttons. That's just a laugh, and there's nothing in the discussion that the Scottish government is having on this particular subject that looks like it's going to make it any stronger than that. But I do believe, Cala, that we're in a powerful position just now in terms of they can't do anything at all unless we give them planning permission to do things. You know, that type of argument. I know it can only be taken so far, but nonetheless, do you not think it would be better if we could have a discussion with the developers cumulatively? And I know you're doing that, and I don't envy you the task, to convince them that they really ought to be leaving a road infrastructure for us when they go away finally that is far superior to what we currently have, and that there should be an obligation, a written obligation on them to do that. You shouldn't have to be firefighting and trying to keep them up to, just maintaining the roads as they are. I mean, I just don't think that's good enough. I think we've got to get something much, much more out of it than that. Do you agree?
Whereas I do agree with what you're saying. it's where we're working from just now that we don't have all that power behind us in terms of demanding X amount of investment for roads infrastructure or whatever other infrastructure. It's a starting point for our discussions. I think this is really where the discussion needs to be had at Scottish Government level to say, well, what are we going to do during this process? What help could we need then? But then what's going to be left behind? So I think it's really beyond me just now, and all I can do really is represent the council and your own views when we're having these discussions with the developers as to what we can insist on. I'm not really at the point where I can go demanding, I'm afraid. I think that's what I'm trying to get to.
I fully understand the position that you're in. It's not an easy position to be in at all, but I think you would have the full support of this chamber in pushing a much stronger line than perhaps you feel you could push. I do think that this chamber would support you in that, and we need to convince the Scottish Government to support us in that as well. The implications for people living in the island just now of the coming developments are significant. It's a little bit like the way in which the folk in Uist and Barra are being treated in terms of the ferries. That's had a significant impact on them, and we're fighting very hard to get something done about that. My feeling is that we should get written agreements with these developers before they start putting a digger in the ground to say this is what we are going to leave behind and that it is going to benefit the people of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank you, Chair. I know we've had a long meeting. I'll try and be brief. It's touch on the roads again. I mean, we're talking about future degrading of the roads and the work is required by developers. But the roads currently, we've had a lot of heavy haulage, like I've read this already on the Lost Road. SSEN have been back and forth, heavy haulage with poles, diggers, you name it. I could take you to quite a few instances on the road where the road is actually getting dangerous to drive on the Lost section of the road. The work needs to be done now, and I know we don't have the money to do it, but we need to put something in place to look at the areas that are actually crumbling. Because if we go to developers just now, the damage is already done to some parts of that road. We talked about bridge. Norman mentioned a bridge. There's a bridge in Laxey where you can actually see a dip coming in the road now. You're actually coming in a dip in one lane of the carriageway with the amount of volume of traffic. There are two sections where a third of the road is coming at a gradient of 45 degrees now because of it's crumbled away and it's pushing drivers onto the main side of the road. These are issues that we're living with now. And this morning coming in, I saw actually someone avoiding that camber on the road and coming right over and made a car in front of me stop because he avoided that camber on the road. They're live issues that we need to deal with. I know the money's not there, but we need to get some kind of solution for it. The other point I was going to raise around the performance was another thing that's going to be a financial outlay to the council, an update on the Crossbow Cemetery. I know Mr. Fraser and Mr. Campbell are present, but we are in need of a new cemetery, and this has been on the cards for some time. I think it has slipped under the radar. I know it's now back on, but I would like to get an update on that because the public are asking about that. So just 2 points that are a big cost outlay at present, regardless of the future.
You call them crossbows.
Huh?
Yeah, Norman's Scottish guy. Cuie. I welcome Cuie list. Column. Cuie. Column.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go back to the council later this week with a direct response on that, just where we're at with it.
News. When you should you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it has been going on now for quite a number of years. And my concern is, I know we've got if we're building a new cemetery, there's a timeline where we have to leave the ground for settlement. It's trying to get an update on where we are with Crossbus, because Crossbus has had a lot of deaths in that area recently, and it is filling. And my concern is that I don't know if we have enough space for that. Is it a 5-year period for the settlement? And we have taken quite a long time to deal with this issue. And the other thing is that I'll keep liaising with the roads team about the roads, because I think that section of road does need some major work sooner rather than later. So thank you for your
Come here.
Roads. No, I'm happy to look at that. The roads team are aware of these issues from the last meeting we had here. They're keeping an eye on things. They have started quite a bit of roadworks around the area just now. You probably see that going on. So there is some significant work planned over the summer, but I'll just check on the Lochs Road for you to see if there's anything further planned there.
Just one other point I was going to add to that too was we touched on cyclists earlier on. The volume of cyclists has increased dramatically on our stretch of road, and the roads aren't suitable for cyclists. Traffic has been held, but it's going to cause an accident sometime with traffic overtaking these cyclists. And some of these parts of the road, you've got to wait literally maybe a quarter of a mile before you can overtake a cyclist. And there are every day we're all being held back by cyclists in one way or another. So it is an issue. And I'll wait to get back to the cemetery issue from officers.
Make it the town. Norman.
Thanks, Chair. Well, you won't have that problem on the Barvas Road anyway, that's for sure. I was disappointed at a recent meeting we had with a developer when they thought that a cycle path was going to be welcomed with open arms and we would be singing and dancing about a cycle path as a benefit. They'd listened to consultations and they'd listened to people who had inputted to the consultations. And I traverse the Barvas Moor, not as often as you, Corax, but you certainly don't see many cyclists on there in the winter. That's a given. You probably don't see a heck of a lot of cyclists on there in the summer. That's a given. So they're listening to people who are feeding into the consultations, who are probably a lot greener and more eco-friendly than we are. And my fear is that these people think that they've done a fantastic deal with the West Side Estates. I'm not entirely sure they're going to do a fantastic deal with the rest of us. I would suggest, and I did suggest to them, that they overpaid on the West Side £4.5 million a year. They could have probably got that for £1 million a year and given £3.5 million to the rest of the community, but they're not minded to. I think we're going to be picking up, as Angus has alluded to before, and unless we're empowered to do something about extracting revenue from these developers, we're going to be sitting with a begging bowl again. I don't seem to think that they realise that planning permission has not been granted yet. And I'm not saying we should prejudice the planning application by putting a gun to their heads, but if they think it's a done deal, maybe they should think again, because what we've been offered is paltry as far as the Comhairle is concerned just now. What we can extract legally, as far as the Scottish Government has given us the power to do, is insignificant. And I do fear that without revenue from the joint venture, which we will be hoping to invest in, we may be struggling to derive significant income from any of the other developments that are happening here. And I do worry that at the end of the day, we're not going to get the benefit that these islands deserve for hosting 3 new terrestrial wind farms and 2 offshore wind farms. And I'm a little bit alarmed from the vibe I'm getting in just one particular discussion, that they seem to think this is going to be on the cheap as far as community benefit is going to be for us. And I don't know, we were not in a position, as Carol said, to strong arm anybody into doing anything, which is a worry. So I'm not appealing to the whole Comhairle to say, well, it's going to be a planning decision for the whole Comhairle. But unless they realise that this has not gone through the planning system yet, it hasn't been approved, I don't know how we can make them realise that what's on offer is not acceptable at the moment. I think it could be doing better, and I think it's a worry for the Comhairle.
To be quite honest, I'm lost, Chair. Have we considered the substance of the report? In other words, I had a question on 7 point. Wait a minute, I get my glasses. 7.20, 7.21. As Calla, have you gone through this report, or where on earth have we got bogged down?
The report was, well, it's an outcome report. I didn't go specifically through each of the lines.
Do you take questions now then, or?
Yes, happy to.
Oh, well. With your permission, Mr. Chair. Yeah, can I go to 7.2 and 7.21 in the report, if I can get my machine back on? It from memory, it discusses 7.2, the refuse collection vehicle. Maybe a Norman can update us. First of all, I would like to find. God, yeah, I am noticing. When that was purchased, I think by memory, you've used up 5,000 miles. And this is modern technology. This is our strive to net zero. And this machine should be an example to us all that net zero is attainable, which I think can never be attainable in your lifetime or in generations' lifetime. As long as there's human beings on this earth, you can never achieve net zero. But anyway, that's for another day. Can I get just a wee update on?
Come all the second days. Yeah, no.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. In relation to the specific vehicle we're talking about, which is the electric refuse collection vehicle, I take it.
Yeah.
That vehicle was purchased as part of the Recycling Improvement Fund money that was given to us by Zero Waste Scotland. So it was the purchase of that vehicle was made by them and their grant funding. An update on the vehicle is currently, well, it's not with us at the moment. That vehicle is away, having been out with the manufacturer to have the batteries reconditioned to allow it to take a full charge. But at the same time, they've been investigating an issue on the back end of the vehicle, which is the body part of it. So the functionality of the bin processing and the waste processing side of things. The vehicle body was made by a company that have since gone into liquidation. So the chassis manufacturer is doing their best to get that up and running and operational for us. It is our intention to have that back on the island in July. And as long as all repairs have been carried out sufficiently, you should see it passing a doorstep nearby you soon.
Yep. How far will one charge take this vehicle? Will it reach Upper Call?
If you keep the curtains open, you might see the road miles that have been done by the manufacturer are showing that on a charge it could do up to 120 miles. However, that is 120 miles with the capacity of the body not being utilised, and then that is on a kind of a more flat environment road-wise than we have here. So until such time as it's back with ourselves and fully operational, we will be looking to see how far it'll go and see if we can stretch it its capacity.
Yeah. Thanks for that. The other one I have is in succession 7.21. We're moving again the Creed Park, and there's good work going out in Creed Park, very good work. But there's a project you're going to get back to producing green hydrogen and oxygen. Is that correct? And this is, sorry, I address you. Are you back producing green hydrogen and oxygen?
Not yet. This project, it's on site now. It's at the foundation level. We should, by October this year, be commissioning the plant, which it'll be owned. The building will be owned by the Comhairle. The equipment will be owned by a private company who are working in collaboration with ourselves and with UHI into making this a teaching space and a learning space, and indeed a small pilot space for others to learn. So there's going to be 2 electrolyzers set up there, so you can see the benefits of one over the other. It will produce hydrogen, probably enough for maybe a couple of refuse vehicles if we can afford a hydrogen refuse vehicle. And it'll also produce oxygen, which is used by the fish farming industry here. So by October, we hope to be generating, and then I think its full completion was going to be by December this year.
So you answered my question as well. The subsequent question was the use of the green hydrogen is for vehicles that we haven't purchased yet, or we're in the process of purchasing.
Well, it's not just for our use either. Other people can use the hydrogen if they have hydrogen vehicles. We have a hydrogen bin lorry refuse vehicle, but that's nearing end of life, I believe. But if it comes to the stage where that technology is accessible, then we can use it. As could members of the public if they had hydrogen vehicles. But that again they've been developed. And I think there are some small vans as well that could be used up here as pilots to see how they operate, whether they're full hydrogen or hybrid hydrogen like the refuse vehicle. So technology is emerging. We'll have the production capacity, but there'll also be they can use hydrogen for other means. So even the likes of SAC, when they build the substation adjacent to our site, could use hydrogen for part of their heating.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to see hydrogen. I think hydrogen is the way forward rather than electric, but there you are. I've got other questions probably on the next one, which is to do with waste, but maybe I'll hold my.
Well, I ask my waste down to you show, so back on Shannon.
Because what I'm seeing in the benchmarking is that council are doing exceptionally well. Benchmarking looks good, actually. There's only a couple of red, and you're to be commended for that. But what I'm going to say is in the waste side of it, because of our striving, you see where I'm coming from, striving to net zero, the impact this is having on us, for instance, in waste disposal. That is, you're going to take waste. In other words, there's so many rules coming up for waste disposal. You're now at, if I'm remembering, the cell in Marybank is going to expire in 2027. So you have obviously be looking to another one. Otherwise, you're going to be shipping to the mainland, but you're shipping to the mainland anyway because of the restrictions put on you because of this striving towards net zero. Am I correct that this impact, the financial impact upon us with the orders that we have from government, that is the recommendations for government, or the orders actually, you're under strict orders there then, is to have this waste put over to the mainland. So the fact of the matter is this striving for net zero has going to cost us substantially, not only this year, but in the next 2 or 3 years. Am I correct in that?
No, Kirsch, the Chair of Mace Gordon Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, there are costs kind of associated with kind of meeting the targets for all local authorities, and they are extra for us given the logistical issues that we face. So we kind of, there will be an additional cost to ourselves for meeting these legislative changes that are coming in over the next few years. And the one that's coming in, which I'm mentioning in the next report, coming in on the 1st of January.
That's right.
Alan?
Thanks. I'm not going to keep up. I think that we're running on. I can rant on too much.
If you're cynical with my net zero, I call it. Tisha. Yeah.
If there's any other questions on the report, I mean, I think I covered the finance side with Councillor Mackenzie's question. So happy to take any other questions on the report.
Kish, take things be Eilean last show. Neil, for the committee, I will put a kundige en askast van jaar. Ja, dat bleef. Usperisia, visserige, roinig skutel. Han asked de visserige, roinig, de kale skutel, waar daar willen kokerichet, daar willen ticherichet. Ha an roinig minigte aan de vastgeven haaskeus, bini konfischer, is een haaskeus, flikt die kisten ze mee. Con.
Thank you, Chair. The draft strategy was at the last meeting series and it was approved by the Core. There's been very few minor amendments to it since then, and it's at Appendix 1. So it kind of details the kind of main objectives over the next 25 years, 25 to 30, and kind of the issues that we're facing. So the main immediate issue is the upcoming landfill ban, which was kind of mentioned previously there. And we are asking for a slight extension to the ban for the reasons outlined in the report. We've approached the Scottish Government and SEPA, so we're waiting to see if there is a possibility for that. The other main thing that is happening is we're still awaiting an update in the extended producer responsibility payments, which we will receive in October. The last estimate still sits around 3.4 million. I'm happy to take any questions.
Wat doen we kies tegen te halen is skutel.
No, my question was on the Benetrove, the cell, that it expires in 2027. Is that correct, Mike?
The sale is probably going to be filled up sometime next year, but there is plans in place to build the next cell already as well.
There is.
Yeah, because the ban on landfill only applies to a particular type of waste so far. So there is the landfill can be used for other purposes.
That's good.
Will be used for other purposes.
That's good to know that we can still use it. That's good. Thanks.
Kies take things to be
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation. When you're talking about there having to take landfill or waste to the mainland, well, I was hearing a report on the radio, talked to us this week, sorry, about we're having to export our rubbish down to England. And they were talking about, I can't remember, it was 100 lorries, articles a day. So if we're going to the mainland and Scotland are going to England, so it might be better to get a barge and just take it down to England. Be done with. Thank you.
I couldn't send from my actions paper. So
Can I factor in that because of this restrictions on us as an island community, surely to goodness the Scottish Government and Westminster, who are behind all these orders and restrictions, that we as an island community, can we get island proofed, as they say, or extra finance for this fact that we have got to travel across the water? It's going to be an extremely expensive way of getting rid of waste. Surely to goodness, because we are an island, that we should then ask the Scottish Government to reimburse us for that. Is that possible?
Call me. We can call me.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Chair. And I think my predecessor had kind of done a lot of work with that. And the item on extended producer responsibility is that the producers of the waste pay for it. So that is why we're getting payments back from that. And the island authorities have an uplift in the payment they receive compared to mainland authorities as part of that. So it is recognised that there is additional cost, but it's the aim and the possibly extending it into other items is that the producer of the waste pays for it. So it's not up to the local authority to pay for it. The person who produces the waste in the first place, or makes the waste in the first place, has to pay for the disposal of it.
So you're putting across the mainland free?
No, but there is money coming in externally in addition to the money so far for this year. That's what the EPR money is to help deal with one element of the waste that we have to dispose of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could have a 7 of a call.
Met ook geluid in het hier recycling kun je gaan. Einig. Just
Thank
weg
you.
it.
Chair. Just we've been talking about ferry capacity earlier on this morning, and now we're looking at shipping 6,000 tons to the mainland. Or the option is extending the life of the landfill and saving around 500,000 a year. Surely with the pressure on ferries and everything, the priority should be extending the landfill and not even considering shipping to the mainland if we can keep it all here, because as well as the revenue cost of 500 to 750,000, there's also the added pressure. 6,000 tons. You're looking at probably what, 2 or 3 Arctics a week, at least going off island, which is going to again impact on ferry capacity, which is already heavily oversubscribed.
Ian, could you get and a solo show had to come good craft.
Sorry, Chair, I turned my mic off early. Yeah, it's estimated there's up to 11 lorries per week in the summer periods involved. And one of the options we are looking at is the proposed treatment system that's being used for Euston Barra. Is if that works for Lewis and Harris waste, we could look at the plant being used in Lewis and Harris, and the output from that can be landfilled legally. It meets a standard that will allow it to be landfilled under the new regime.
So I go on again. If you can call my Isaac culture tea. Sad. Yeah, article out so.
We know there's not enough space. I think every comment is that the ferries are always full. And I think the discussion we had the other day at the ferries group, where they can't measure and they have no record of how many unsuccessful booking applications are made, it's clear that they have no real grip on the actual reality of the demands for the ferry service. And the fact that they're talking of, oh, we'll have a spare vessel. Well, they need 2 spare vessels, one to come and provide a second ferry on here, and then the second one would be the resilience vessel in the fleet, not just one. And I think last September when we had the meeting in Harris, and CMAL said that they were planning to sell the Isle of Lewis as soon as she came off. It was just sheer lack of understanding of the needs that are here right now, not in 5 years' time, not when we get the new Stornoway ferry built, but the one we need now.
Who cares? Ian.
In recent weeks, we've had issues in Euston Barra with several of the bin lorries being broken, resulting in delays in collections going into the weekend, etc. What is the situation with the bin lorries? Is it a one-off, or is this a problem that's only getting worse? Are they getting older, or is it a technical problem, or what? Have we just been unlucky, or?
Well, I probably can answer if you need more detail. You normally come in, but it is a one-off in that instance. But
sorry, Colm, I can't hear you.
So sorry, it is a one-off in that occasion, but it is an aging fleet, which we are looking at the wider kind of fleet replacement of the bin lorries and other Comhairle vehicles, just to see if they can become more resilient. And there are, additional costs for the older fleet. Some of them have required significant repairs at significant costs. So
Thanks.
Okay, wil je tisch aan de nest, dit ben een heel. Het boeile kundige, en wel ik 3 punten hun. Kusper sheach, visserige, maar hij spat is stjerne. Wij gaan afsket uit visserige dan Comhairle, je naar stianetes innewisch. De spat is stjerne, wij ze blijven oprucht aanwielen kede richet. Is a schiedig unde in een kiezen tajakse, is zo'n sessen aanwielen kookje richet. Werkig boeien oprucht naar de spat in Hounds en Ask, ik kon je in de dichtgewaar van ook wees. Die column fisher is an Ask, is fikri kisten some me. Column, oh, you know.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is just the annual report that is presented to this committee in relation to the abattoir of the year, previous year, and the proposals for the up and coming season. Once again, the report details what's been mentioned historically, which is satisfactory audit results coming back from both Food Standards Scotland and Quality Meat Scotland, whether the audit that they carry out annually is in relation to the process and its suitability, and it's coming back each and every year has been satisfactory, which is always good to hear. But in order to keep the abattoir operational and have it as a viable proposal going forward, a member officer working group was set up last year to discuss issues with the abattoir and look at potentials, ways to bring additional income in and keep our operational costs down. The member officer working group is met regularly and considered a variety of proposals. One of the things we've been looking at is the potential of having additional income through a deer larder facility, and that is still being proposed and looked at going forward. But the other things we're looking at is later opening, and that's one of the things that's in the report in front of you. We historically been open in August, but have had a slow uptake in bookings. So in order to keep the operational costs down this year, the proposal is to open on the 1st of September, right up to the Christmas period. Alongside that will be more detail recorded on the throughput numbers, specifically the areas we're getting the bookings coming in for, the numbers that are coming from these, and those who are looking to do both a kill and also a butchery service. And these details will be presented to the next committee, but also be looked at by the member officer working group moving forward. So I'm happy to take any questions. Either myself or my colleague Colin will be able to answer them.
Well, Kishtik things be
Thank you for the report, and I'd like to thank the MOG for the continuing work on this project. I don't think it would be correct to say that the lack of throughput is a result of the decline in stock in the islands is a result of increasing fees at the abattoir. I think that's a result of bureaucracy and red tape that is tying up crofters and disincentivizing them to increase their stock or encourage new people to come into crofting to increase the stock across the islands. But I'm just wondering, in terms of this application to the Scottish Government for a private kill coordinator, I hope its remit won't extend to councillors, but I think it would be good if the remit of this post would look at some sort of private-public partnership involving the community that might provide a more sustainable lifespan for the abattoir. I wonder if that could be explored, or has it been explored by the MOG in terms of, mentioned the deer larder and a butchery service. Could there be some sort of cooperative set up whereby all these services are under the one umbrella? that will provide some sustainability for the service going forward.
Thank you, Councillor. The private kill coordinator post would be looking to add value to the facility across the board, and would allow a specific operator to spend their time looking at avenues for income and sustainability for the abattoir. Should we be successful for that position? If we're not, we'd still be looking at anything that would keep the abattoir more sustainable, and whatever proposal that might be, I'd be willing to consider and look at.
Yeah, John Ormond.
Sorry, Chair. When do you think you'll have notice of whether you've been successful for that funding? Or?
I was hoping to have it noticed before we met today, and I certainly would. I'm pushing to have some kind of indication before the abattoir proposed to open in September.
So then you'd be able to go forward to recruit and.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, John Ormond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jan Orban Colin, for the report on that. Yes, I'm on the Morgan. There is a lot of good discussions goes on at these meetings for the future of the abattoir and that. Question, I'm not sure exactly what the answer is going to be to this, but personally, I think it should be a statutory service. What do the committee feel about that, or is it possible that this can happen in years to come? Thank you.
Norman, statutory or not? Or, well,
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. It would require a change in legislation to make it a statutory service, and that would, if that was the case, it wouldn't be just affect this local authority, it would affect others. So I think it'd be very difficult to take that forward in any way.
Thank you, Chair. As a member of this member officer working group, I must say it's probably one of the best member officer working groups I've been on since I joined the council. The information on the officers and the collaboration we've had between us has been excellent. But my concern here is that we have to put a message out to the users. This is either use it or lose it, as far as the abattoir is concerned here. And I don't think we're doing our case much good by putting an increase of 5% on the kill charges. But I do understand that that has to happen and it has to go across. But the message has to go out there to the users. If they're not using this facility, we're not going to be able to sustain it. And that's quite evident. And it's been quite evident what's come across in the member officer working group as well. So there's a clear message out there that needs to go to the crofters.
So is meer goed kan je Comhairle. Raamaiach, nou wat ik in je goede maag.
I think we should know. I think we did mention at the member officer working group that press releases would go out to Mr. Campbell will probably confirm that, but I think we need to get that message out early to people now that in order to keep this facility open, it has to be used.
Okay, now, Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, and I think part of that is to kind of increase information about the public health benefits of using the abattoir as well, and the risks associated with that. I know the NHS Western Isles have been doing some kind of comms on hydatid, etc. So we'll be utilising that in any kind of communications we're doing as well.
So, nor you chenny and Mr. Macharach now, Colin.
Well, it will be as part of the advertising of opening of the abattoir.
I'm so curious to get what you can over me.
Sorry, Chair, I shall have my light on. I would prefer to see that correspondence at least start going out sooner rather than later, because if we leave it to near the time, you know, and people are going to know there's going to be a price increase, we will need to inform people. And one other point I had too, Quality Meat Scotland said at one of our member officer working groups that it was one of the best abattoirs in Scotland. And that's to be commended. But they also offered some funding for a post, Mr. Campbell, at that meeting.
Any further update on that? And I'm sorry, I missed the last step member officer working group due to a family bereavement, so apologies I wasn't able to attend. But they did actually promise that they would look at funding a post for us. So an update on that, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And just in terms of the kind of publicity, I think it was the intention after the committee agreed the opening dates, we would get the publicity out after this meeting. So it will be fairly imminent. Just and include the public health message and use it or lose it. Yeah. So in terms of the post, that was the private kill coordinator post that you normally mentioned earlier.
Okay, thanks. Thanks.
Okay, well, my staff are for you, so.
Well, yeah. I would bow to the staff has put his off. Thank you, staffer, for letting me in. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think what Colin has mentioned there and was mentioned at the member officer working group is the benefits of using the local abattoir, and that is that in relation, in comparison, in contrast to using home kill, because it's verified. The meat is verified. There's a vet there, so everything is done as clean as possible, and the state of the abattoir is absolutely first class. I've been through it, and many of the member officer working groups have visited it as well. We have what has happened in the reports that we got, the audit that we got on it. It is first class, and to keep that facility, we need people to use it, and we'd ask people to make sure that they use it this year, because it is coming to the stage. It's getting very, very fragile. And what we were worried about was in the increase, if we didn't put the 5% increase, that if it didn't, if we didn't have the finances at the end of the year, we would have to, instead of putting it up next year, you would have to put up 10, 15%. So that was the problem. There was a problem there, is if you do put it up, you run the risk of possibly people saying, well, this is too expensive for me. But really, at the end of the day, it's £47 to kill a sheep. That's it. It's 47. It was 40. You've put up by £2 something. That's all. I know that's a big sum of money for some people, but in the whole picture, it's still a very good service, a service that I use and many other people here use, and especially the quality that you get. And I think that's the main thing that we have. It's a fact that it's verified. The food that we're getting out of that, it doesn't contain some of the harmful things that can happen to animals at home kill. And really, we have a fantastic facility, and it's up to us to use it. The other thing is, if we didn't put this up, would that affect the numbers? Nobody knows. Nobody can tell. So really, that's the answer to that. But the abattoir staff are doing a fantastic job, and thanks to the individuals here that are going, both Colin and here Norman, for that.
Yeah, let's call them. Mustafa.
I'm also a member of the MOG group, but I'm the only member from the Euston-Barra. Obviously, most of our constituents don't use, and I think my colleague there, the answer to being a statutory service, if we do that, then the implication to the caller will have the other abattoirs down in Lochmaddy and Barra as well to become a statutory service, so that'll be a difficulty. Yeah, I mean, in terms of Colm, I think when you're issuing the advice, I think it's obviously need to word it in a way that the other abattoirs as well, or the other communities that use other abattoirs in Euston-Barra obviously feel included and, look at the benefits. I think from all the meetings we had and with all the goodwill of the members and all the information and things, it looks like at the end of the day, it's unless I think Councillor Crichton mentioned about, we mentioned something, some sort of cooperative of the crofters locally, or somebody that need to take it over on a commercial basis, because it's run as a business, and if it doesn't, if it doesn't wash its face and doesn't make money, you can only, especially in the climate that we're having, looking at increasing fees for care homes and different things. So it'll be very difficult to try to
keep subsidising something that if people are not using it. I mean, like colleagues Angus Morrison said there, it's very important to highlight to people. If you don't use it and don't support it, there's only so far it can go. But thanks for the effort for everybody's.
Right, staffers. I mean, Torri could go pretty good and up for Comhairle. Right, Colin, Farkle Mayek.
No, thank you, Chair, and just like to thank the kind of the councillors as part of the members officers working group. It has been very productive for the staff as well.
Sorry, Gordon, you're online. I didn't notice you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very interested in the abattoir, having proposed the actual working group myself. And I noticed that there's been a 37% drop in throughput at the abattoir between 2018 and 2024. Now, and there's been a huge increase in fees, and this kind of suggests that further fee increases could exacerbate this decline. Now, I just wanted to agree with what's been said by Councillor Hussein and Councillor Morrison about enhanced community engagement and even marketing campaigns, because this would probably engage crofters, farmers and local businesses and emphasise that the abattoir's role in supporting local food production and reducing food miles, and increased awareness and community buy-in could boost throughput. The other thing I was going to say was maybe operational efficiencies and cost reductions. Could we build on the 2024 season successes by exploring additional efficiencies such as energy saving upgrades to machinery or consolidating low throughput weeks further? I think that was mentioned by Mr. Campbell. The other thing I think is a good suggestion from Councillor Crichton, and I think what he's saying is diversifying income streams. Could we actively pursue alternative services such as the proposed deer larder service, or value-added products like maybe butchery training or meat processing for local markets? I mean, the MOU could maybe conduct a feasibility study to assess demand for these services, potentially partnering with local businesses or cooperatives, as has been mentioned, to share cost and infrastructure, because additional revenue streams could offset the 56k shortfall. And the other thing I was going to say about was fee structure optimization. What about instead of a blanket 5% inflationary increase, consider a tiered pricing model that offers discounts for bulk bookings or loyalty incentives for regular users? You know, flexibility in fees could encourage higher throughput again by making the service more accessible to smaller producers. And lastly, what about, aggressively pursuing other funding opportunities such as Scottish Government's agricultural or rural development funds to supplement the 50k Crown Estate allocation? Maybe the MOU could explore, post-Brexit funding schemes aimed at supporting rural economies or sustainable food production. And, maybe by exploring some of these strategies, the MOUG can work towards stabilising or increasing throughput while keeping price increases minimal, ensuring that the abattoir, which is a success, remains a viable and accessible service for our crofting and farming communities. Thanks, and thanks for all you do.
Aye, Tarplip, Gordon, Joe Poindon, is it Colin?
Yeah, thank you. Chair.
Norman.
I'll let you Norman come in if he wants to, but I think the private kill coordinator, if that post comes off, that can be utilised to kind of explore a lot of these issues that kind of Councillor Murray's raised. I think it's quite difficult for existing staff and probably the MOU to have the resources to do that unless that comes. I mean, ultimately, it's providing a service, and a lot of these kind of things discussed are they more for the private sector to kind of explore? And we have, and I think Norman can confirm as well. I mean, if there is kind of a cooperative interest in taking over the abattoir, we'll work fully with anyone who's interested to try and make it work for them, because I think if the core keep it on a list, numbers increase substantially, it's likely always to have to be a subsidised service. And the only way the numbers could increase substantially is if the marketing, if looked at a wider marketing strategy for Lewis Lamb, something like that.
Mr. Son.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to reiterate there what my colleague had mentioned. The private coordinator position would be certainly looking at this as priority. However, very good suggestions made by Councillor Murray there, and certainly something that will be discussed at the next member officer working group to see if there's anything we can do in the interim period if the private coordinator position wasn't successful. But just to go back to the staff. The staffing costs are being looked at continuously to see if there is anything we can do to reduce our operational costs, and even by opening slightly later in September, it's potentially going to save us circa £14,000 in our operational costs. And at any periods of downtime, the staff are redirected back to other cleansing services related duties, and these budgets are paying for the work that these staff members are doing. So once again, it's going to be, unless there's a significant increase in numbers, which with the advertising we hope will produce, we're going to be in a similar position this time next year, and looking at some kind of bridging gap for the shortfall.
Okay.
Thank you,
Johnny.
Tapara. I'm on this MOG as well, and we've done a tremendous amount of work, and we tried to see if we could possibly not have any rise at all this year, but we accepted the fact that there was a 5% increase across the board. When you take into account that we've risen, that the price has risen by 25% in the last 2 years, a 5% increase this year is probably as well as we could have expected. As Angus Morrison was saying, we have to educate the people and let them realise that if we don't use this facility, we're going to lose it. We have one of the best facilities, as has been mentioned, in the country, as the inspection highlighted. We've seen in recent times abattoirs closing on the mainland and down in England as well. So the situation is serious. And if people aren't going to use this facility, a fantastic facility, we will lose it. So I accept that we agree this 5% increase reluctantly. Thank you.
Tapara Sunshine. Finis be Eilean. How come
just to finish, yesterday's meeting at the Sustainable Development, colleague here, Councillor Crichton, was chairing it. There was mention, I had asked about any funding from the Primary Industries Fund, and I was directed to one called the Shared Prosperity Fund. So, and I think there was some, Crichton can verify that, there was some hope that we may get some funding from that. So if that's a possibility, this Shared Prosperity Fund, then why not do so? But because another thing that we have to reiterate again is we're the only authority that is running an abattoir. We're the only one. And it's really, we have to be thankful in that respect, because to get individuals, I've been personally around the butchers here. You walked into them and find it. I don't believe they're interested at all in running an abattoir. They say they will use it, but that's the case. Crofters, you get crofters to come around and start running this as, I think it was tried before, Heather Isle Meats, wasn't it? If I'm not mistaken, and that collapsed as well. We're in difficult times, folks, and it's difficult times, as Mr. Crichton says, for crofting as a whole. It's very difficult because of all the legislation that's coming in. It is actually crippling. But these are things, Shared Prosperity Fund, so we maybe look at that.
Yeah, Norman, Shared Prosperity Fund.
I've taken a note of it, thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I just
add to, Norman's, if you look at the shared prosperity fund, did you maybe look at the angle of, I'm concerned, obviously, the abattoir in Barra, we have an 80-year-old or some nearly 80, and he'll have to be closing that. So at some point, just to look at how do we help other abattoirs, the Western Isles as well. So.
Yeah, Norman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I've taken note of that also. And my first priority is looking after my own abattoir, and secondly, actually looking at those in Euston Barra after that. Thank you.
Just following on from what Councillor MacLean was saying, it was me that raised the shared prosperity fund, yesterday, because it's been used, in other food and drink sectors, to have a look at how things could be improved, and certainly in an overall plan on having a look at how a bit of diversification and other things could be done. It would fit into the eligibility criteria, I think, for, progressing that fund. Not saying that that fund will be available, it's a UK fund. It was available, and I must commend officers in the council. There was 250,000 in it that had to be spent very, very quickly this year, and they managed to secure that because it was going to go back to UK government if it wasn't spent. Just having had a look at figures and 5%, and when we're saying it's a lot, 5%, 2,000 sheep go through it, so it's only going to take in another £5,000. So when you're looking at the gap of something like 50,000, and when the main throughput is sheep, you see, if you just didn't increase it for sheep and increased it for the others, if you're saying that that's having an impact on perception, on whether you're going to use it or not. I'm just looking at it. If the member officer working group was looking, that the 5% was going to reduce throughput. It's not a lot of money you're talking about in the overall picture. And, if you froze one and kept the 5% on all the others, I'm just looking at an option, did you consider that? Because the main throughput is 2,000 sheep. You've got cattle and others that are going through.
Norman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. One of the things we're going to be doing is having a record showing where the bookings are coming from going forward, which will be a presentable record as opposed to just recording them through as numbers. And it will then look to coordinate to see if there's any areas who are not getting any bookings coming in. And I think once we have more detailed information in a presentable format, it'll allow a bit more scope then to look at flexibility for adjusting pricing structure going forward, if it is an option for us.
Right, tappla moon you close at the yours to him machine. But boy like going to go of like 3 hun. Cusper a hoch, quisser hugman, hundrien, basic lewis, ne herrick, da will she I dicket, and now shot there's fisser takrien, is on kunrien, basic lewis, ne herrick, I was a galats and daver, da will she I dicket, there is a moloch by an opruch bow off a get, gerunje, kuberke in a PM Eden. Agus an broses dialavi is on the Cumbrian. Being competition is on ours goes 50 kistens and people. Colin.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've kind of summarised it, most of it anyway. It is just for noting, and it's to recommend the establishment of the Members' Officers Working Group.
Next to who offered opbrug, was ik kanonlijk en comedy die bij een opbrug gestegen, beveen met bouwig gehoog. Haar molle kun dit kerret wou a huige ele woeien. Een bouw is een oor in een skieden tui arlennes. De herre uit skieden woch, skied ook uit Carleweg, and the Siar agus nish agus locha tua agus skide an roer. Bí an gariche agus an neergariche an suige ide wie een oprug, maar horrig ide an driachken. Zoals in de kent zo'n keed ide mannen, maar als je tolligt is zijn, maar als je tolligt in de skide en ide goede merk. Als je een herrig skide loch, skide ook agus Comhairle en de Siar agus nish locha tua agus skide an roer. Als je tolligt te leren, dus je shit kerry boy, las de skiden zijn janners.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually going to suggest he doesn't live in any of those wards, but Councillor Ian MacLeod, with his transport background, would be actually quite useful to have on the member officer working group for buses.
Zijn warrig kun je kerry. Ja. Nes, de herre skiden boch. Goeien ze juist doorheen en neus.
I propose Angus Morrison.
Goeien ze beerle. Nou, is skier ook uit Comhairle weg. Misty. Ze tolligt te leren, ze zijn Misty. Kook je juist gaan. Uit Comhairle. En de Siar uit nish. John Orman. Kook je juist. Comhairle uit Malcolm het. I'm sorry dat Malcolm tech. Uit loche toe uit skiden roe. Of dus ga je juist Comhairle. Goed er tech ja. Nee, er tech ja. Zoals een kerry uit Mr. MacLeod eerlijke wissigen. Je tolligt te leren, je zit.
Is there any merit in having Councillor McNeill on it? He's got good experience in the Meags. No.
Had de koppen juist. Je wil juist. Zo, wel moeilijk kundige gewoonlijk 3 punten hun. Ja.
Just a wee question, Chair. I noticed that the contracts for 7 years. Is there any particular reason for 7 years, considering the various problems we've had in the past, and during contracts that.
Check Leona, Colin, over to be on some check Leona.
Thank you, Chair. It was before my time, but I think it was what was preferred by some of the operators or some of the discussions at the time. But that can all be discussed as part of this process anyway. What the length of the contracts are.
To do with people gearing up, isn't it? And the cost of all that.
There's a minimum amount of time that if they're having to buy kind of buses or get buses in. So that was part of the consideration the last time.
Right, take me that. Will you dish out?
Aye,
but gonna be fake for could you meet the vote? Well, moeilijk kundig gewoonlijk 3 punten hun. Ja. Det var kusperen nu visserige woonstructuur konig toch harappeten tjallen. En naast door visserige erotus commuun woonstructuur harappeten tjallen. En kon allappe en gesurus techkel allappe. college open je nu kennen is leerrij bunstructuur kan op het in Jalan agus takrin is dan een bunstructuur zijn lyric is fake nanjelen en Siar. Bini kalmach gedig is een laag agus rappers mag gelenen en laat gekisten semi rekers. Kalm.
Thank you, Chair. My colleague Robert McLennan is online, unable to answer any detailed questions on this. He's been doing an awful lot of work with other authorities as well in putting together a strategy for increasing the electric vehicle charging infrastructure through the islands. There's also the question as well about the future of the infrastructure, whether it should be within local authority control or indeed be within the private realm. There are some funding streams now becoming open to us, and your approval is sought for what we're doing with the gap sites and the further replacement programme. So happy to take questions, and Robbie is online to answer any as well.
Sigur question ik tennis be.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, is there any links between this item and the previous one? Could there be, as part of the bus placement scheme or the new contract, if there was electric vehicle charging included in that? Or electric buses going forward, I suppose.
I'll see if Robbie can come in on that, but my own view is that when you're looking at something the size of a bus, you need to have something dedicated for it. I think it goes beyond the capacity of a normal charging post. Robbie, would you concur with that, or do you have any other thoughts?
Robbie? Yes, thanks, Chair, thanks, Calla. In terms of the sizing of the infrastructure that we install, it's very dependent on the DNO or the distribution network operator, SSE. So in terms of the location of some of the infrastructure that we put in, we're quite limited to the size of infrastructure that we can put in. And at the moment, 50 kilowatt charging posts is the largest type of charging posts that we can put in. And unfortunately, it would take a considerable number of hours for a bus to actually charge. However, that doesn't rule it out in terms of maybe smaller buses or minibuses and things like that. And it will depend really on SSE's infrastructure and if they're going to increase capacity throughout the Western Isles. If they do over coming years, there is definitely scope to include large-scale infrastructure.
John, can you ask? Yeah.
No, that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah. Nicht.
Just on the question of whether just on the question of whether we privatise or taking it, what's the sort of income we get from operating at the moment? I think we operate, was it 43 at the moment? Do we get any income from it? And just thinking of going forward with the renewables, maybe it's a way of getting cheaper electricity through the council and keeping that and benefiting the communities here by getting them charged through there. And
yeah. Thanks, Councillor. In terms of the slow charging, which is 7 kilowatt or 22 kilowatt, we charge 43 pence per kilowatt for that. But for the larger, faster rapid chargers, we're at 59 pence. At the moment, we just cover cost. If anything, we probably could do with increasing our tariff rate to look at replacing some aging infrastructure over future years if we do decide as a COLA to operate an EV network throughout the Western Isles. Additionally, in terms of renewable technology, we have explored opportunities of having photovoltaic and battery storage. The difficulty, I suppose, with that is the cost element and the grant funding that we do get from Transport Scotland. If there was additional funding, it's definitely something that we could look at, but unfortunately the payback for that type of infrastructure is over a longer period.
Benich, was something in that?
No, I wasn't thinking of putting up our own turbines and things, but just in the renewables work that's coming out, that's going to be coming on stream, that hope it's something that we could build in, that if we are operating our own charging system to encourage more and more folk, we need more charging points, but if we're not going to get income from them, then it's not going to be viable for us as a Comhairle to run them. I suppose that as vehicles become better able to come from Tarbert to Stornoway and back in the middle of winter without having a full charge, then maybe it'll encourage more folk to have more electric vehicles. But I think the development of electric vehicles to cope with our climates is going to be a determining factor as well in how much money they were likely to make from these anyway.
Yeah, I do agree with the points that you've raised there, and I think as part of phase 2 of the electric vehicle infrastructure fund project, looking at the business cases moving forward in terms of decisions of the direction of travel that the Comhairle would like to go, I think there are key discussions to be had on the points that you have raised there.
I could also add, Chair, to that. One of the considerations there is how are people going to charge their vehicles? If we're going, if a provider is going to charge, say, 60 pence a unit, and you can get it for 15 pence a unit at your home, generally people here will use home charging. Now there might be other disbenefits to that, but if everybody that looks at getting an electric vehicle locally uses home charging, then the business case doesn't stack up for using a private charger.
Okay, just as a thing, is it? I'm not sure what the rules are, but is it a regulation now that all new houses, new builds have to have electric vehicle charging points, or is that not something that we have here yet?
Robbie?
I think in terms of the building regulations, I think that's recently come into force for the infrastructure, obviously, that we've put in. It's for non-domestic related properties. So I think you are correct in terms of the building regs that has recently come in. So the majority of houses that have or has off-street parking, and if they do have an electric vehicle, it's highly likely that would be the route they would go down, just to cost savings.
Okay, thanks.
Richard?
Yeah.
Okay, Mustafa?
Thanks very much. Very quickly, it's some of the private operators, like we have, I know 2 in US, third sector have chargers, but the cost of insuring and maintaining the thing is higher than their income because it's not used. So they're both thinking of just letting them and stopping it. So are we building that in our strategy? That is there somebody that could maintain it for them cheaper than what's in the market at the moment? I know Clodagh-Kirkabis, I think they're losing money, so they're thinking, and Coram are doing the same.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. We're fortunate as a council that our maintenance costs, our warranty costs, and all our running costs are covered by grant funding that we do get from Transport Scotland. As part of phase 2 of the EVIF project, we will be looking at private companies coming in potentially to look at running the infrastructure on behalf of whether it's our own council here or other councils on the mainland, and trying to ensure a fair tariff for users. But the maintenance costs, especially in rural areas that we have here, like that we're located in here, is significant. And even at 59 pence for our 50 kilowatt posts, we are just shy of covering costs at the moment. And I think what we've tried to do is to collaborate with community groups and private sector partners on the island and come together and try and get maybe local contractors trained up in the maintenance and upkeep of the network, saving contractors from the mainland coming up to do that work. So that is ongoing discussions with both public and private partners locally to try and get a more cohesive approach to maintenance and warranty locally.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, just because obviously we're going to end up with all this infrastructure that's just rusting and just. I've seen people stopping and obviously the machine's not working and they couldn't charge. Because I mean, most of this third sector organization got enticed at the beginning with giving grants to install it for free and all the encouragement to do it, and then now you can't maintain it. So. Yeah, thanks very much for that.
Colin?
Thanks, Chair. You've already answered my question, Robert, in the first. I was going to ask, have we recouped all we've expended so far in grant money in putting in all this infrastructure? That's the first one.
I think in terms of the income that we generate from the network, we cover the basic running cost. The key thing that we don't cover is the asset replacement costs at year 10 when these pieces of infrastructure deteriorate. I think going back when we set the tariff rate, we had given 3 options in terms of tariff costs. One being fairly low, one being in the middle, and the more expensive one, I think it was just under £1 per kilowatt, and that allowed for asset replacement costs at 10 years. Obviously, that is a lot of money for the end user to be using to charge their electric vehicle car. But that is something as part of the next tariff review, if the COLA decide to continue running the network and not go down the road of having a private partner taking on the network, that we would have to consider looking at the tariff rate again and increasing that to cover all costs, so there's no cost at all to the COLA.
Yeah, that would be. We've got here in the recommendation 3C. It says approve progress in phase 1 of EVIF program to deliver the project. That would be dependent on how much we get or if we recoup our costs. Would you agree? And if our costs aren't recouped, in other words, you're subsidizing drivers of, you'll see where I'm coming from, drivers of EVs. Whereas I drive a petrol one, I'm not subsidized. So why on earth are the council subsidizing anybody who drives an electric vehicle? I'm sorry for the electric vehicle drivers who are getting a subsidized transport, but we cannot be doing it.
So at the moment, the council, kind of the cost for electricity varies side by side, but it's approximately anything between 25 pence per kilowatt and up to 30% per kilowatt. The remainder of the costs, making up to 59%, is really on maintenance and warranty. And I suppose we have been fortunate that we do get grant funding for this, and the cost has been very, very minimal to the council, if anything, in terms of cost to the council. But I do take on board, I think government, when they actually started putting EV infrastructure in, they were trying to get a higher uptake of people to transition from fossil fuel cars to electric cars, but that has changed significantly with government withdrawing grant funding over the last couple of years, and this EVIF program potentially could be the last kind of grant funding, and they are hoping that private partners would start taking on the infrastructure so local authorities can maybe step back and private companies taking the networks forward.
And can you see that possibility of private companies taking that forward in the islands? Because I can't.
We've had a number of discussions with private companies, and the approach that we would look at taking, if it was the COLA's wishes, was to collaborate with Orkney, Shetland, Highland Council, Murray, Argyll and Bute, and collectively get one partner to take on the network in the north of Scotland because it will be more viable for these private companies, and that is a lot more attractive to the private companies than they wouldn't make money if it was just based on our 43 chargers. But when you take in the whole of north of Scotland, it's very appealing to them.
That's good. Thanks, Robert.
Gordon.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the report. The report indicates an indicative grant of 2 million allocated to ourselves, Orkney and Shetland, for EVIF programmes, but it doesn't specify how this funding will be split. So can we get a detailed breakdown from Transport Scotland and Hightrans on how the 2 million grant will be allocated? I'm sure, Chair, that you'll be advocating for an allocation model that accounts for our dispersed population and higher logistical costs. And the other concern I have is that of the concentration of the infrastructure in probably what you would call urban centres. So phase 1 plan lists 9 replacement charge points and 4 new charge points with a focus on the larger settlements like Stornoway, Talbot and Castleby. So smaller locations such as Eriskay, Uig and Ness receive only 1 installation, and some areas are completely overlooked. So that means that rural communities may be underserved disproportionately, affecting crofters, small businesses and residents in remote areas who rely on an equitable access to transport and infrastructure. So my suggestion would be, could we have a Western Isles specific addendum be developed to the joint EV charging strategy that prioritises rural communities in phase 2 expansion plans? And this could be underpinned by local consultations that I believe are going on, as Mr McLennan had indicated, to identify priority locations for EV chargers, or collaboration with community councils to gather input. Thanks.
Thanks, Gordon. Robbie.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. In terms of the first point, the indicative £2 million, the reason it's down in the report as indicative, we only got confirmation just before the report was developed. We still haven't had the formal letter from Transport Scotland. However, they have given assurances that the funding has been ring-fenced for both Shetland, Orkney and ourselves. In terms of the strategy and development expansion plan that was submitted, it was a joint plan. So at this moment in time, the funding was to cover the 3 authorities. They haven't confirmed whether they're going to divide that up per local authority. So we'll wait to hear from Transport Scotland on that. In relation to the second point, in terms of the more rural areas, a lot of the infrastructure that's getting replaced as part of phase 1 is replacement of existing infrastructure that's reaching end of life. So it's reaching the kind of 10-year mark. And one of the key kind of pieces of work that was undertaken in determining the locations throughout the Western Isles was a consultation process that was inputted into the strategy with both private and public agencies, along with looking at data sets from back office providers to see what the demands and utilizations was across the Western Isles. And additionally, there was a dedicated electric vehicle email address set up for members of the public in the Western Isles to come in to give us some feedback in terms of locations and any issues they were having with their infrastructure that was in the ground. So taking on board all that information, that was what really dictated the location for the infrastructure past and looking forward. So I hope that kind of answers your question, Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much for that answer. Thanks.
Okay, Gordon, thanks. Anybody else in the room? Don't think so. So wordt boile kundig in een malle in ik 3.1. Boile het aankalkulen. I was kuspere dich, als ik haast die heen. Sure, zo'n visserug. Ik in de rest van de dia werk op pechtige kuspere.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not on the committee. The first item, Stornoway Town Centre review of pay and display. Can we get the figures for the going back to say 2018 of the cost and the income of this? I mean, I don't know how long this is going to last, but we don't have a traffic warden. So can I have these figures, please? Maybe others would like them too.
Sorry, Councillor McCain, I didn't hear your question.
The income from the pay and display.
Yes.
Kuspere hun die kan er op hier. Kan je kisten zijn?
No, it's a report outstanding.
Yeah, which is the item you said, number 10, yes. Didn't you?
That was looking at a review of do we expand? Do we look at increasing paid parking to the likes of South Beach, for instance? There's a bit of work involved in that. Our current priorities are looking at pedestrian area and Stornoway and dealing with that.
No, I think
what you're asking for is the income for last year.
Yeah, what's the income for the last? Well, I said 2018 up till now.
So
to see the comparisons.
From when?
From 2018.
From 2018 up until now.
Till now.
I'll have to see if we can still get that information,
yeah,
because
that's fine.
A lot of it was lost with the cyber attack. But the income has diminished over that period because we don't have enforcement. So I think any further review would be what are the options for increasing that income and enforcement. So we're considering whether we could put barriers on some of the current car parks that are pay and display, such as at the airport. But again, there's a bit of work involved in that. I'll try and get the income figures for you, but it is going to show a decrease in income over that period.
Yeah, well, and Chairman, that's a point. I mean, I don't know what the figures were in 2018, but if we're now talking about 2025, and there's been a huge drop in income, it might pay to employ somebody. That's a point I'm trying to get round. So thank you. I'll get the figures.
I think that there's a bit more to that, Councillor Mackenzie, that even if we increase the income, it doesn't necessarily pay all the costs, because with the police enforcing through the traffic warden, they were using their own back office and appeals process and system for fines. We would have to put our own systems in place for that, which again increases the cost. So, I mean, there's a bit of work behind what the options are, and I think that's the purpose of that future report coming to committee.
Yeah, and I believe that one of the options was looking at the town centre managers, who could also have that as part of his duties. Thank you.
Potentially.
Gordon?
Sorry, Chair, are we on item 11 at the moment?
No, we're still on item 10.
Okay,
Gordon.
sorry, I lost the Gaelic, so sorry.
Het is een eerste die waar ik op weg gegooid kuspere hun die ik behoort te worden, gaan met die als de hoffingen immer voedig als jaren niet hoogkomt.